With liberty and justice for all.
I thought you didn't.
These are 1950s attributed by
Eisenhower.
right-wing Congress.
All right. I've already had one request to remove bills and claims from the consent agenda. Are there any other additions or
I would like
deletions?
to move 9, 10, 11, 12 off the consent agenda.
Onto the regular one? Or onto the regular one or the table?
No, I want to put it on the regular agenda, take it off the consent
Okay.
agenda.
9, 10, 11, and 12.
Yep.
And Jason, if I can respectfully request that the consent agenda, that the Pitney Bowes contract that's been vetted by the village attorney and requested by the treasurer be added. Also permission for the planning board and zoning board to attend training be also added to the consent agenda.
Any objections on the board? All right, so
Put it on the consent agenda. Are you putting that on the consent agenda?
yeah,
Yes,
do we
please.
need to discuss that at all?
Just very briefly, I reviewed the contract, I requested some changes of Pitney Bowes. They ran them through their corporate folks and said they wouldn't change anything in the boilerplate of the contract. I made it very clear to the representative from Pitney Bowes, who I had a cordial conversation with, that there were certain things in there, if there ever developed a problem between the village and Pitney Bowes, which I don't anticipate, it's just a postage machine, that we would have to work them out if they came up, because certain things in there, whether they're in the contract or not, I won't have the village do. And he understood, and he
Okay.
said he'd work with us. If a problem ever developed, he would work with us, and I've dealt with Pitney Bowes before, and I have complete confidence if the problem arose, we would be able to take care of it without resorting to litigation or anything like that. So it's good to go.
Okay.
So we can leave it on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's captured in the minutes that was had this introduction.
yes, just to make it clear.
Okay.
All right, anything else for the agenda?
I'll move it.
I'll second, all in favor?
Aye.
And public comment. Who'd like to go first? Anyone? Yeah, Ed.
Come up, do I sit here? or-
Just sit there, it's a small enough room.
Ed Burke, live in the town. I've been a landlord for 22 years. I received a copy of the proposed law. I just wanted to, I had some questions and comments. I wanted to stay, but I have to go coach a game. But in reading this, the questions that I have, what is a dwelling unit? What is a sleeping unit? Well, we got the 129-8D, reasons that you can lose your permit, lacking electricity. My tenants pay for their own electricity. If they decide that they don't want to have electricity, that means I could lose my permit. Question, I'd love to have that addressed. Again, with 129-8B, my building happens to be in a strip of buildings. If, God forbid, one of the adjacent buildings catches fire, which causes my building to catch fire, I'm then responsible for housing my tenants in perpetuity until they can find another dwelling. I'd like that to be addressed. In it, that same section says tenant finds alternate housing. So assuming they are displaced and there is another rental available, and they deem that it's not fit for them, am I still responsible for that, even if there are other dwellings available? 129-9 on section E.
D or B?
E. When you go to D, property owners and managers and tenants shall be responsible for providing access. And I'm specifically talking about tenants. If my tenant refuses the building inspector entry, I'm responsible for a violation then. I understand if I refuse the building inspector access, but if the tenant decides that they don't want to provide access, I'm deemed out of compliance. How is that enforced? 129-12, the enforcement and penalty. I understand that for every day that there is a violation, a new violation is accrued. So if I'm understanding it correctly, if I have a violation in day one, I could be subject, let's just use $500 as a fine. In day two, if that's not remedied, I now have 2 violations, which would be subject to $1,000. In day 3, I'm subject to 3 violations. So after 3 days, I could be subject to $3,000 in fines. If something happens on a Friday that can't be repaired to a Monday, I'm responsible for $3,000. I don't know if anybody's really sought that out or looked that entirely through. How much time is going to be allotted for an inspection? I'd like to know that. And then when we get to the annual rental inspection checklist, a lot of this I think is very good. Health and safety is important. I think just about every landlord is concerned about that. When my tenants move in, I take a picture of every room, carpets, walls, everything's in great shape. If I have a tenant for 2 or 3 years and on the renewal, the building inspector comes in and there's holes in the walls, there's dirt on the carpet. Am I responsible for bringing in a cleaning crew to spruce it up after a year if they deem, certain people have different ideas of what cleanliness is. Is there any peeling, chipping, or flaking, or abraded paint? Is that considered abraded paint? What is considered abraded paint? When you walk down the steps, all the dings in the walls, is that the same? And then extension cords and whatnot.
You probably got to go over this again, because I don't remember and I don't have notes for everything that you said, so.
I was, if I may, Mr. Burke, I'm the village attorney, what I could ask you to do, especially because a public hearing hasn't been scheduled yet, what might be productive, if I gave you my card and you sent me an email with your questions and comments, we will be able to incorporate them into the record once we have the public hearing. And then we may even be able to address some of those before the public hearing itself with the board. So if that would be acceptable.
Sure, that would be fine.
And that way we have a full record of all of your comments and statements, and I'll note them, we'll print them out, we'll get them to everybody for consideration, even before the public hearing, if you could do that, because that hasn't even been scheduled yet.
Correct.
So that might be helpful.
Yeah, it is, and there's a lot of landlords
Yeah,
here
you
that
want
we've all spoken to. I think everybody wants to have safe, clean rentals for their tenants. I'd be more than happy to assist in any way that I can, and I'm sure there's other people as well, to help the village get the best law on the books that they can.
Well, you're welcome to either collectively submit something or pass my email around, and we'll incorporate everybody's comments certainly into the public record and all that, if that's
That's perfect, yeah.
what that.
It's easier to have it in writing anyway, so we can
Yeah.
review it one at a time. Thanks, Ed. Yeah?
We're still discussing this, and there is a great deal of disparity among board members on what is being proposed, and it is on the agenda for another discussion. So some of those answered questions may be addressed.
Good.
Okay?
I think this is the 7th version of the law. I counted, I think this is the 7th version of this law,
Well,
since the first one was
it
written.
is a consolidation of 2 laws. There was a committee which Ariane and I sat on, and landlords, and we came up with a recommended version to the original proposed version. And there's an attempt to meld it together, but I'm not sure we're melded yet.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Other public comment? All right, yeah. Tim, thanks.
Tim Rogers, town of New Falls. This is related to parking on the village side streets. Village side streets near campus are used as parking lots. This could become worse with plans for a development like Park Point on the south side of campus when those residents choose to drive closer to class. SUNY charges students to park in their lots. With free parking next to campus provided by village side streets, that amount can be larger, so SUNY makes more money per parking permit, and SUNY can ignore serving their students who are more sensitive to costly parking passes. SUNY is using village infrastructure that they do not pay for. Village tax dollars should not be subsidized by the college by providing free parking for a segment of the college population that SUNY appears to be neglecting. I have a list of at least 11 village side streets that should only have 2-hour parking during the day and evening, monitored by the village's incredibly efficient parking enforcement staff with chalk tires.
Thanks, Tim.
Would you send that to us?
Sure.
Or the clerk, rather?
And I have actually brought this up with the college president twice, with obviously no result. Their line is that they seem to think of themselves as completely isolated and self-contained, because the thinking was moving the parking lots away from the buildings that are, the old main where everything's clustered, and moving it farther south would force students to walk. And it was like having blinders on for exactly what you mentioned, that people aren't going to walk far. They're going to keep parking as close as they can, and that means side streets instead of the parking lots that used to be there before the recent construction. So if you have any thoughts about how to actually get the leverage to do that, please.
Well, I think-
That's why it's kind of like a village initiative by enforcing parking on these side streets would then encourage the students to go to campus.
As long as we keep the parking shorter than one class or
Right,
something like
2-hour
that.
parking during.
I see that's why the 2 hour.
Well, I think even if it's 2 hours and somebody went to one class as opposed to maybe all their classes,
Right.
there's a difference there.
Right.
There's at least turnover in the parking that way. I have a question about that in terms of how many of those side streets are streets that have their own off-street parking. Do most of those residents have their own off-street parking, or is that a place, would doing this mean that the houses that are already there, the residents would have to move their own cars?
I would think some properties provide off-street parking, some do not. But I think the bigger picture is, why have we bought into this idea that the village is supposed to provide off-street parking? There's a free municipal lot on Huguenot Street. There's an opportunity for private property owners to rent out parking spots. Why is this something that we automatically believe that the village should subsidize?
Thanks, Tim. Unless that wasn't rhetorical. Adele?
So, I'm here for the property inspection law, and I support the idea that owner-occupied rentals should be included in the inspection law. I'm long overdue, and I think that it's fair. But everything else, the more I look at it, is already taken care of by the laws that already exist. And the new law, from the way I read it and the more I read it, it allows for, or even begs for, selective enforcement, whether a small chip of paint is a violation or not, or if the grass is too high or not. What Ed said was, what happens when a tenant doesn't allow the building inspector in? What happens if there's a water main break and there's no water? What happens if the tenant doesn't pay their electric bill or their oil bill and their services are shut down? The landlord's fault? We should put them up somewhere? So we might even know about some of these things. There's no evidence that supports the need for this type of legislation, and I'm against it.
Thanks, Adele. And again, we've had this conversation a bunch, half a dozen times. Our enforcement is not currently useful. It can take more than a year to get the violations fixed because of the way we do things. And ultimately, everything that's on those checklists is the property owner's responsibility. What the relationship is between the property owner and the tenant is a whole different matter. What you put in your leases, et cetera, et cetera. But as Ed had said, holes in the walls when the tenants move out, et cetera, that is the responsibility of the property owner. That's why you have securities that
They
pays for
didn't say
this.
when the tenants moved out.
No, one of Ed's example was he takes pictures in the room 2, 3 years later they move out, he takes pictures again, and
No,
there's
he was saying what
dirty
about
carpets.
the next inspection if the same tenant is continuing to live there?
Same tenant being there.
Yeah, that's what he
Same
said.
tenant.
Oh, I see, I see.
And you're coming for inspection.
Right.
That's what you were saying.
I
Yeah.
see. Thank you for the
And that's why he was saying everybody lives differently,
Right,
has different
right.
standards of
And you don't look
cleanliness.
in everybody's apartment checking annually, you know, ourselves.
Right, sure. Well, that's why again, that's why the whole engine of this law is this checklist, but more importantly, the fact that we give it to you 3 times before we have the inspection. So there's no excuse for anyone to not understand exactly what's their responsibility. There's no excuse for landlords not to check the apartments since we give you the blank checklist 30 days before we show up, as well as have you fill it out and get 100% compliance before you have a tenant. So I'm a broken record. You guys are occasionally a broken record. Sometimes you have some better new points that I like. But again, as Will said, we haven't even set a public hearing yet. And we're still working on the law. Will has some revisions that he had put in, and that's why we delayed it a little bit, because he hadn't had a chance to look this over yet. And I think that we were down to 1 or 2, I think even just 1 line in the law that we were still debating philosophically before we were ready to move forward.
Well,
So
there was an add-on into the new draft that I think needs serious discussion.
yeah, and that's
The
what we're here for
And
tonight.
Checklist
I
of
just
fines.
want to clarify that this isn't a we law yet. And until it is moved to a public hearing by the majority of this board, that is when we can all argue and disagree, but we're not anywhere near that yet.
All right. Pardon me. Is there any other public comment? John?
My comment has to do with the exterior of that relates to this law. My request is that whatever rules and regulations and fines that you put on the landlords as in respect to the exterior of the property, I request that you put those same rules, regulations, and fines to owner-occupied owners.
Just like your house,
So, yes.
if you lived in the village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say, yes, so my house,
They do apply.
um,
They already apply. That's a status quo.
well, if they already apply, why aren't they being upheld?
Because we don't have the resources to inspect every building, so we prioritize the ones where the people living there don't have the power to keep the property up.
That's precisely the problem.
I assume that's why we inspect some and not others. I don't
So
know.
that's exactly my issue, because what you want to do as a board, I'm not pointing at you, Jason.
You can point me. It was my idea in the first place.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What you want to do is you want to have me be responsible for a higher standard than my owner-occupied neighbor. Now, my tenants ultimately pay the cost for that increase in quality, if you would. So what this law does is it makes the tenants, people that can least afford to own their property, making them pay a higher rate and be at a higher standard than the owner-occupied person. It just isn't fair.
We
Now,
do give violations for owner-occupied houses. You know, it's happened because I've seen the paperwork go in court over and over sometimes about junk in the yard and unregistered vehicles and
Yeah.
and just things that are overgrown or siding falling off.
So in this law,
Okay.
this will address a village-wide,
Not this law, no.
okay.
Because this is a narrow
because-
law.
Okay, with this narrow
this,
law,
yeah.
there's a problem, because once again, you're putting the renters, the tenants, you're demanding that they pay, and that's what it is, that they pay a higher living cost in order to pay for these things. Now, I know where the law is coming from, and that is that you think that all the tenants should be living in a place where the quality is a Cadillac style. But there's some people that can only afford a Yugo. So
Having only driven the Yugos, I can only imagine.
and you know what? And they're happy to have it. And they're happy to have it. When I'm showing apartments, I hear from people all the time. I can't afford that price. I'm looking for something a lot less. I can't afford it. And what I tell them is, you know what? I agree with you. The rents are high. But for a $300,000 house in the village of New Paltz, you're paying $800 a month in taxes. And that just goes to the higher rents. And this law is going to require the renters to pay a higher rate, but the owner occupied next door, who could be living in a nicer place or a dumpier place, you know, we live in a community of diversity, but yet we really don't like the diversity if it doesn't fit into our category.
I think I get you the point, Sean.
Okay.
Let me reiterate something that I know has been brought up before. That this law that's being considered about rental inspections does not create any new requirements. Everything that this law requires you to do to maintain your property is existing law today. Last week, everybody here who owns a property, whether it's privately owned or you rent it, has to do everything that's on this checklist that we're using. There's not a single thing that's new. It's all existing law, and most of it's state law that we can't even change. We can make it more restrictive, but we can't make it any less. When we say that you can't have your grass higher than 6 inches, that's the state of New York telling you that, and that applies to homeowners or renters. What we do is we provide annual inspections of rentals, obviously, and we enforce the others as we see them, or as the complaints come in. It's not about the new. It's about how we enforce the existing law, not creating new burdens for landlords.
Well, my question is, how many people have been taken to court over the last year for these very same things on the list? And you may not know the answer.
Yeah, not off the top of my head.
I'd like to speak on one other thing besides the
as long as we can keep it
that's
going.
The
Yeah.
landlord law is on one thing. I'd like to speak on as to Park Point, the issue of Park Point. I find that this community is fighting with each other over who's going to get the water and sewer. Now, this community should be banding together and telling Park Point, we don't want you in this community. And the reason being is the college has said publicly on many occasions that they can only house 50% of their 8,000 students. That's 4,000 students that live off campus. Now, some of us may not like it, others may like it, but that's besides the point. The college is building 230 bedroom dorms, coupled with Wilmerite 732 bedrooms. That's an additional 1,000 bedrooms. So we have 4,000 people living off campus, and we're going to have 5,000 bedrooms. And the college says, and Jerry Benjamin repeatedly said, the college does not lie, and they're not lying. So that means that we're going to have a potential for 80%. We have 4,000 students, 5,000 bedrooms, that's 20% potential vacancy. Now, some people may think that's great. That's going to bring the cost of houses down. That's going to give us a better, higher vacancy rate. That's great for the community. Except the problem is, one, the taxes aren't coming down. As a matter of fact, those taxes that I referred to earlier are going to at least double, because what's going to happen to this community, where we have a 4-bedroom house with no kids going to this public school system at $22,600 per student, you take a 4-bedroom house, let's assume there's 2 parents and 2 kids. If you have a single parent and 2 kids, it's even worse in the case of the number of people in the school. So you have 1,000 bedrooms that now become filled with families. 2 parents, 2 kids. That's 500 additional kids. At $22,600, that's $11,300,000 that this community needs to come up with. Now, as we need to build more schools, educate more kids, we don't have the facilities for another 500 kids. So the taxes are going to go up because we're going to have to build these additional classrooms. With the new proposals that the school district is proposing, an additional 500 kids in our schools can mean a 50% increase in our school taxes. So that's just, you know, students, college students making noise at night, it's not the best thing. But there's worse things out there. There's, all of a sudden, the average house that's paying $8,500 in taxes a year gets hit with $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 in taxes.
If you could bring it to a close.
This community is going to become less affordable. Coupled with the traffic, that's a 10%. The census says that there's 14,000 residents in Newport. If half of them have cars, that's 7,000 cars driving our streets. Between Park Point and the college, that's an additional 700 cars. That's a 10% increase in the traffic. With Newport, and I know we're all here for the same reason, we love the place. You drive down Main Street and you get a feeling of, wow, this is home. It doesn't get nicer than this. But we're teetering on sprawl. We're coming to the point where we're no longer going to be a small village community. We're gonna go to the next step, and I don't know if the majority of the residents are gonna like that. Thanks.
Thanks. No. Thank you.
Sorry for going on.
I do the same thing. Any other public comment? Ben.
I'm sorry I showed up late, and I'm unfortunately going to go back to the earlier issue, which is why I came here. I kind of feel like Landlord is a done deal, and I'm sorry if people don't see that, and I really hope that you understand that that's not good for the community, but I'm not here to go into that today. The purpose of my being here was about the landlord-tenant law, and I'm glad that I got here when I did, because it kind of seemed like you basically kind of made my point for me. The challenge that I've had from the beginning with this law is I haven't seen the need for it. It hasn't been expressed to me. I've listened really hard to everybody who's been proposing it or involved in the creation of it, and I still have yet to really understand the benefit that this will bring or the solution that this will create by having this law. To my understanding, as you said, Jason, your checklist, it's already there. This is all in existing law. Enforcement is entirely within your jurisdiction already. You don't need a law to decide how hard your building inspector is going to check things or what they're going to choose to notice versus what they don't choose to notice. That's how you guys choose to run your department, is up to you. So there was one thing that I was aware of in this law that we don't currently have, and I don't even know if it's still in it in the latest iteration, was I believe owner-occupied rentals were also going to be inspected. That is the only material change I see in a problem-solving way. And so taking the rest of it, in the best case scenario, I would call it punitive, and in the worst case scenario, I would call it unconstitutional, as it seems to be depriving people of basic property rights. I know you guys are not trying to create something, simply for those purposes. And given that we have such a large, passionate, intelligent, involved group of people here, we would love to help solve whatever real problem you see that you have. I have yet to hear it articulated. My understanding...
Landlords are not maintaining their properties.
I'm sorry?
Landlords are not maintaining their properties.
Wonderful.
And the building department has not yet had the tools necessary to enforce things quickly or thoroughly enough.
Let me finish.
That's the elevator speech version.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah, if that's not a legit problem in your view, is a whole different question.
Oh, no,
but that's
I
the
do think
impetus.
that's a legitimate problem, but here's where I don't feel it's a legitimate problem that we have, because the moment this sort of law was proposed, I immediately went to the building department at that time and ran the data. And the data showed over 99% compliance. Everything is solved within 30 days. Everything is solved within 30 days. You have one person a year, and it's usually the same person, that gets taken to court. That's what you've got. Now, there may be a whole bunch of people that are not compliant that you, for whatever reason, or the building department, for whatever reason, isn't coming down on, but that's internal, and you can choose to deal with that anytime you want. The building department has the ultimate authority. They can take a sticker and place it on a front door, and it says condemned. And that's it, game over, all tenants out, landlords collect no rent, everybody has to go home until it's dealt with. When has that been done? That's been done like once every 3 years to one property?
There's very
So-
specific circumstances, and it's done very rarely.
I'm
Because
aware.
it rarely exists, the need to condemn a property.
It's absolutely existing. It's a tool that can be used, and I'm not suggesting that you use it more. I'm suggesting the reason it hasn't been used is because those circumstances are not prevalent. They're not there. You're not going to condemn a property over peeling paint. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Good luck. So the point being made here is you already have all the tools that you need at your disposal. If you want to include owner-occupied rentals, great. If you want to do better enforcement, please do it internally. Because all this looks like, from my end, and I'm trying to look at it as objectively as possible, all it looks like is punitive and unconstitutional, and it's not good for anybody. It's not going to help the landlords, it's not going to help the tenants, and it's certainly not going to help the homeowners, because it's just going to raise costs and problems for everybody involved. I am more than happy, this is where we had committees. There was the landlord-tenant committee, there was the R3 committee, and we were more than happy to be involved with solutions, with how to improve these problems. You're never going to have 100% compliance. It's not going to happen. You won't get that. However, we can improve these situations more. Sally, I'm going to sing with you for a moment because you and I have talked a lot about this, and I appreciate all the input you've given. You have a certain number of things that are very critical to you that homes need to have for habitability, and I agree. But the law's already there. If any one of those things are missing, slap goes the sticker, closed goes the door, out goes the tenants, and down goes the rent. You think we want that to happen? Nobody wants that to happen. So if there's a problem, it's going to get taken care of, and people are taking care of it. Do you have people on the outskirts of the law, people who are going to be hard to pin down? Always. Always. And this law is not going to make it any different. What you will do, and this has been a pattern that I've seen legislatively, is you will take a lot of good people who are doing the right thing, and you will put them on the wrong side of the law. And that's exactly where you don't want people to be. You don't want to turn people into non-compliant landlords, non-compliant property owners, simply because you guys can't get your enforcement together. I'm sorry, that's not our problem. And by the way, I'd be more than willing to make it my problem, because this has been a solution that's been proposed internally before, and I believe it's been suggested to the community at large, and it's one of the only ways that I can see reining in these costs going forward. We can have an independent agency do all the inspections, get whatever qualifications you think you need, and and give them whatever checklist you want them to have, and the costs will be real and managed and not artificially created, which will make everybody on this side of the room happy, and do it as often as it's necessary. And then, if they pull something, we know there's no political motivation, there's no personal motivation, because that's an independent agency. Great.
Thank you,
Do it,
Ben.
it's done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So those are my comments on that. I realize you guys are putting a lot of time and energy into this, and I appreciate the time and energy that you put in, and I do care about the tenants, the homeowners, everybody. All the groups together I think are equally important, but we can work together to resolve whatever issues you think you have. I don't see anything being resolved with this particular law.
Thanks, Ben.
No problem.
Leonard. And also, since it's all basically landlords talking, if someone has said what you're going to say before, please just reference it, even if you could say it better than them, just so, because we've got a long meeting tonight. So, Leonard.
The light doesn't work, so I'll come out into the light. I believe your fees are excessive. They are excessive, they are excessive, they are excessive.
I rewrote them.
You pay the building inspector X amount of money per hour. It takes her an hour to prep for the inspection, give her an hour to do the inspection, maybe an hour to come back and do the inspection. Places like Ben's, which are bigger, are a different case. I pay $900 for a house. There is no way that you're paying that inspector that much money to do that much work, to do that much inspection. I also pay a village tax, which a portion of that goes to the building department. When Mrs. Jones calls and up says, do I use R19 or R21 insulation? You don't send her a bill because a portion of her money goes to that tax. If you want these inspections done, you need to make it reasonable, because as John Johnson pointed out, those fees become a reflection back on the rents. If you want to make it more affordable, work with us, but they are excessive. I can't say no more than that. Thank you.
Thanks, Leonard.
What you
Yes, sir.
calculate your figure of inspection cost?
I'm sorry, say again?
How did you set the price of inspection? What was it based on?
It's based on well, we haven't set them yet, and that's part of the conversation we're having here. Though I will say that building department costs can be paid almost entirely by fees, whether it's a application fee for a planning board or rental inspection fee, etc. So that's ultimately the goal, is to fund the department, except for the example like Len says, if someone calls and says, which installation do I need, you don't send that bill. But that should be a very small percentage of the workload done by the building department. But other than that, the fees, we're actually going to be discussing that later tonight, because there's also local law being proposed that would eliminate fees and fines from the village code and put it into a separate kind of fee schedule that the board adopts annually. So we review them every year to make sure that they're up to par. Inflation doesn't demean the value of the fines, et cetera, et cetera. So we actually don't have those set yet. And part of it is the costs, part of it could be, especially for some of the fines, you want, and I'm not talking just this, any fine in the code, you'd want it punitive enough that it's a deterrent to deterring future behavior. If it's a littering fine or something, you want it high enough that someone's not going to litter next time, as an example that we probably don't enforce.
I just want to say for a moment, I just came from 2 lease signings, and I did tell them about the meeting that I was going to, and the fact that this law, and again, I don't know what the current iteration is, but had fines of up to $750 for violations, and believe me, they were scared. They didn't want to have to pay those fines. If you wanted to scare people, you've accomplished that. I don't think government is supposed to be run through.
No, and you know better than that, Ben. We didn't mean to scare anybody. But is there
other? You've got some debt to pay off. I'm sorry, but
there's no debt to pay off. Ben, how about this? Trust that the reasons the law was written are the reasons that I've said, and not any other ulterior motives.
What was the reason? I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
And I'm not going to get into that. There's a public look. You need to let us do our jobs at some point, because a lot of your questions are answered as we write the law. So you guys have been coming out and saying the exact same things from day one. We hear you. We've heard it the first 3, 4, 5 times. We're still, as Sally said, we're still in the process of writing this. So you actually don't know what the law is going to say yet, because we haven't finished. And that's the purpose of this process, is that it's for the board right now to write a law, and if, as Sally said, if whatever law gets majority support of the board, goes to a public hearing, and that's when we have this conversation, because then we're having a conversation on the final product.
So you don't want input on laws before you...
No, that's not what I'm saying, and you know that's not what I'm saying. I do want input on the laws, but we're starting to hear the same input repeatedly, and now it was getting into insinuations of other motives and all that, and I don't want the conversation to go down that road. Just, we can keep it respectful.
Response to this input.
I'm sorry?
I put the numbers in front of you, when we had that first meeting, when you first proposed this law and didn't get any input and did it between yourself and the attorney, that's how you described it.
Yeah.
We all sat around the table and I brought you Kathy's numbers and I put them in front of you. And since then, and that was over a year ago, there's been zero explanation of why this law is even necessary.
It's been explained repeatedly. In the press, here at meetings, on TV.
What is it?
And I'm not going to get into it now because this is not the place or time to have a back and forth debate. This is public comment where people can make comments, we'll hear them.
Then my request
but this is inappropriate to keep going.
Something or put it in something that people can pick up, something in writing, because I have yet to see that explanation.
I'll make sure you get one.
Great.
Any other public comment? All right. Thank you all very much.
Can I say something about the building?
Very, very briefly, John. Very, very briefly.
Why do we have multiple building inspectors part-time as opposed to one full-time building inspector? And the reason I ask is because I came into the building department and I met one gentleman, and then I came in the next day and I met someone else and he had no idea what I was talking about. And honestly, I thought it was the same guy. I thought some guy there. I think the village would be better served having one person that knows everything that's coming in as opposed to two separate people that have half of the information.
It was a decision that was made. I kind of I like the idea of one full-time person at first. Now I like two part-time. It's like 1 3/4 time and 1 1/4 time guy. Because I like having more than one set of eyes on things. And I apologize if the left and right hand didn't know what they're doing in your case. They generally do, and they work very well together. Especially because we have other staff that we finally filled a couple positions in that department, the planner, the planning board secretary. So we've got an entirely new building department, which is working actually very, very well together. And having those multiple set of eyes, and then I guess with Holly there, you have 3 sets of eyes on most issues. It was just a personnel decision that got made, given the people who applied for the job, given the staffing. I don't remember the particulars at this point.
Not quite, but it is to answer your question, I think, without answering it, sometimes personnel decisions are controlled by contract or by Ulster County Civil Service.
All right, yes.
Can
Oh,
I ask
yes.
you if it would be possible in the water bills to put a notation of some sort in there also to tell people to put the number on the front of their house? There's a lot of houses in the village that don't have any numbers on them. Whether it be for the police or the firemen or whoever's looking, just put it.
I think that comes with a $100 fine in the new law that I wrote.
Only
for landlords.
But only for landlords. I'm referring,
It's your building. You gotta keep the numbers on it.
But I'm referring to so many of the residential homes that don't have numbers on them.
That is going to be changed look, it's going to take time, but yes, thank you.
Stick something in the water bill and tell them what size to put. Not a 2-inch letter, but a 4-inch or 6-inch.
That's not a bad idea. Next time we have a blank, because we put other notices out, so
Okay.
we'll add it to the list of suggestions.
Thank you.
I saw one other comment. Yes, ma'am.
To say that I agree with all the landlords, that I'm really concerned about your laws. I'm really concerned how you're going to make the decision. And I'm really concerned that a lot of people from the village and from the town, they're going to leave because of that.
Thank you.
People are going to put their property for sale because your taxes are going to go up. Crimes rate are going to go up. You put more people in, there is less work, less enjoyment, and I'm really concerned.
Thank you very much for your comment. Last public comment, anybody? All right, moving on, I'll move the consent agenda, absent items 1, 9 through 13 inclusive. 1 and
No.
9 through 13 inclusive.
9 through 12, 13.
Yeah, 13
Oh, okay, I'm
we're
sorry.
okay with.
9 through 12 inclusive. And 1 because Rebecca's not here to sign it. Unless the board, all right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next up, the tentative budget. Where did I put mine?
So are we going through this?
No.
All right,
I'll explain that in a
because
second.
I have a lot.
I'm sure. Give me a second. This is very brief. If you'll remember what happened last year, it's basically the same thing. The way the process works for the public, for us, a reminder, the mayor presents a tentative budget by March 20th. By the end of April, I can't remember the exact date this year.
Public hearing by April 15th.
Okay, thank you. So March 20th is presented. The public hearing must be happened by the April 18th. 15th. And the final budget adopted May 1st. Thank you. So tonight is just simply the presentation of the budget, the tentative budget to the board.
And it gets presented to the clerk too.
Acknowledged.
See, there you go.
We'll be in the minutes.
So what I would ask is, this is just so people understand, and the public understands, what's in the tentative budget, it does not include any input from the Board of Trustees. This is just something done by the mayor, the treasurer, and in some villages, the finance committee, so Rebecca Rosser, the deputy mayor, had say in this as well. And so what I would ask, once I explain a couple of things that are in it, is simply ask that the board adopt this as the tentative budget, and then at our next meeting, accept that this is what the tentative budget is. At our next meeting, have more time blocked out to go through any changes people want. And then, because we can make changes up till May 1st. Even after the public hearing, we can make changes. So we've got the next 3 meetings to decide this. Does that sound like a decent process to follow?
Yes, but what if we have some things we know about right now?
Yeah.
That aren't the line by line things, but maybe some big ticket items.
Mm-hmm.
I see one of mine, 2 people are here to discuss. So I thought that might be, since they took time out of their day. I began my day with Gina at 9 a.m.
I took over at 3.
I figured, since she's still here drinking a cup of coffee, we may want to.
May I ask a question about the tentative characteristic of the budget? If we say, yes, we approve or we recognize this as the tentative budget, are we saying anything more than that the mayor has fulfilled his obligation to deliver a draft budget by March 20th?
March 20th is the cutoff date. The mayor has delivered a tentative budget today on the 12th. That's all you're saying today. You're not voting on the budget. The budget can be revised with suggestions from all board members. At the next meeting, the public hearing should be set. The next meeting is what, the 26th? Okay. Certainly at the next meeting, the public hearing should be scheduled for some date prior to April 15th. So right now you are correct. You're recognizing that the mayor has delivered the tentative budget as of this date. It's been reflected in the record already that he's delivered it. And now it's time to...
I would like then to move that we accept this budget as the tentative budget by the mayor as presented in a timely fashion.
Second.
All in favor?
No, I want to discuss. I think that is a
discussion on the
mistake.
motion.
Unless the board is willing to schedule several special meetings if necessary to discuss the budget. Part of what getting into trouble last year was exactly doing this process, and it created great difficulty, hard feelings, discussions weren't held that perhaps should have been held, and I think, and I don't care whether we do it tonight, but if board members know and have certain questions about the budget before it becomes a tentative budget, or even if you want to make it a tentative and start having a discussion now, but there is only one board meeting before the public hearing to discuss the entire budget.
April 15th?
Or close
The
to
next,
it
the
before.
meeting would be
Okay,
April
but you're
9th, that's what
calling for a
actually I'm
hearing.
looking at right now.
So I
Oh,
think-
so if we don't discuss it tonight, you're saying we only get to discuss it on the 26th because April 9th would have to be the public hearing.
that is correct.
And then we
I
can
wanna
discuss
discuss
it
it
later
tonight.
then. Okay, so look,
I mean, I
We can-
spent all day with it,
we
so.
can pull the two apart, because one is just a formality, one is the substance. The formality is Tom's motion saying, yes, we have received the tentative budget. And then we start the process, and then I think we can start in either, well, actually, what might make sense is just start the discussion, which would at least show us how much we need to discuss, and then set up any special meetings we might need by the end of tonight's meeting. Does that sound about right?
If we have time to discuss
We
this
do.
tonight, we've got a long agenda.
So we'll table other things.
But the bottom line is, the mayor has presented what
Yes.
he's termed a tentative budget, and that is what it is.
Right.
But,
So-
and I'm not disputing that, Will.
I'm okay
just
with
saying.
voting on that part of it as long as we're also having a discussion.
That's fair.
How about that?
Fine.
Okay.
As part of this discussion, and I would like to suggest that we have time between now and April 15th to notice and to hold a special meeting. So we
Yeah.
could notice and hold a special meeting.
If we
That would
agree
be-
to do that.
Right, if we agree to do that, but we have the time. All I'm saying is, we have the time.
Let's see
I
if
don't
we
know
think
what
we can get it
people
done
want to
in
do.
3 meetings or not, and we'll see, and we'll
Well, let's-
figure it out. Anyway, there's a motion on the floor right now to accept that I have submitted the tentative budget. So moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed.
Okay. Before we get into that discussion, I just want to point out two things that.
Why are you opposed?
Hmm?
Why are you don't have to answer, but I was
No, I
wondering.
There are two things in here that I'm sure people would want to know. One is the tax rate, which I'm proposing in the budget is 1.6% increase, which, given the fact that we use 2% for inflation, means we're actually operating at less operating expenses than we did even last year. So it's not even enough to keep pace with
Inflation
inflation.
is actually 1.6.
Is it exactly
It's
1.6 this
exactly
year?
1.6.
Huh.
I
So
did that
again-
today.
Interesting. So exactly the same as last year then. And all right, the second one is, and again, this comes just from me and not from the deputy mayor, not from any trustee, and it's going to be a broken record. I put this in every budget for the last 7 years. The salaries for the board I put in at mayor's 50,000, deputy mayor at 10,000, trustees at 8,000 each. So those are the two things that people would look to first. The rest of it, the board has the budget, and the board has the worksheets, so do we want to talk about this? Just want to make sure there's nothing else. Stephen's not here. There's nothing else that would want to come before this, right? Do we want to discuss this now?
Erin needs a copy. If anybody has any extras, you probably don't.
You can
I
have
don't
mine
have
at
a
the end of the
copy.
meeting. Do you need it right now?
Take a look at it while you're discussing it, but
I can
it's
do
what-
clerk's copy for 1
I'm
second.
sorry,
No,
I was filling in for my kid.
Before,
I can work from my worksheet.
let me pause for a second. Is there somebody here who's here for another reason,
Mike, we-
for something specific on the agenda? Yeah.
Well,
For
that's
which
Mike
Mike?
Rizzo.
Oh, you're my
Park and ride.
yes.
Park and ride.
Park and ride. Okay.
We can
Where
move
is
that
that?
up. That's on.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
What number is
I mean,
that?
we have to
I'll move that we change the order of the day.
19.
Yeah.
And so, the rental housing?
You're actually the first thing on here.
After the budget though, so we'll.
Right. The budget is a presentation, and then under old business, the first thing is the local law.
So, can we add, let's see, all right, so we've got housing law, or the rental law, park and ride. Anyone else here for something specific? Aaron?
Budget.
But obviously,
Well, we're
okay.
doing that. We're doing that now anyway, because
Well,
that's
that may take a while. Do we want to get Mike Rizza out of here first?
We've been doing the housing.
that might take a while too.
No, it isn't.
No.
All right, let's move to 19. Mr. Rizza, Will, do you want to describe that one?
Yeah, this is with regard to the park and ride. Right now, the New York State has agreed to extend the funding for the park and ride
I think this was it.
to January 31st, 2015. But the lease
I did that.
is about to expire, and we need to discuss having an extension of the lease to match up to the January 31st, 2015 date that the village is going to continue getting funding under the current state contract. Mr. Rizzo has sent to me a proposed extension, which I don't know, I believe I forwarded this to the board. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it yet, but Mr. Rizzo wanted to come in and talk to us this evening about it.
My concern mostly is, there's only 85 days left in my lease. There's no extension in place at this time. I need to make plans of what I'm doing with the property. Everybody's intention, the state and the village, seems to be to renew the lease, but in 9 months I've gotten very little progress done on this, and I understand the attorney isn't, the attorney I was working with is no longer representing the village, which puts another little bit of a bump in the road for me. The reason I wanted to be here is just to clarify where I stand. And the village has been, helpful. Nancy, the treasurer, has been very helpful with this. But I haven't asked the village to do very much of anything with this park and ride from the beginning. I mean, I don't want to get into all the history of the park and ride and how it got built and what went down in those days, but I haven't come to the village with any problems with it. I haven't asked them to pay for anything. They've been reimbursed for everything through the state. I've laid out money. I've done extra work on the park and ride, and what I need from the village at this time is help getting the extension in place and help getting the renewal lease in place. My feeling, if I don't have something in place in the next 30 days, I'm going to start looking for other options for the property. And I think anybody, with any kind of business sense would do the same thing. I mean, this is 9 months of trying to, it's like pulling teeth trying to get information from the state, and even getting phone calls or emails returned. I emailed the village attorney 3 weeks ago, Joe, and never even got an email saying that I'm not going to be the village attorney anymore. So, until I finally called in and they told me, oh no, you got to. And then it all started again. Send a draft of the lease. I mean, I did all this. I've been doing this for 9 months. So my concern is it needs to move forward now.
Will, what do you think?
Well, first of all, getting an extension in place should not be a problem. It's really not that complicated. I see here, and whether we want to do this publicly or not is up to the board at the moment, but you want, did you change the figure for the monthly maintenance? Right now it's
the monthly
25.
maintenance, there's an increase in the monthly maintenance.
But the village is not getting any increase from the state. So the whole point of the park and ride, and again, if we're going to do this, we do it quickly for now, because I don't want to take up everybody's time. The park and ride is a pass-through from the state, okay? Right. And that's what it was designed for. That's what the state contract says.
Right.
And it's not going to be possible, because we're not going to get that additional money, we being the village,
Right.
not going to get that additional money from the state.
Well, I understand. The thing is, the increase in maintenance, we're talking $60 a month. Okay, forget about it. I mean, my point is that I haven't had an increase in maintenance in 5 years. The cost of electricity, which I pay for, the cost of maintaining the lot has gone up. I haven't asked for a dime in five years more.
I understand.
So, for the matter of the lease extension, which is 8 months, I'm not going to, picker over $60 a month increase. My point is that nothing's getting done. If I didn't put this lease extension together, and if I didn't put a proposed lease together, and if I didn't make probably 50 or 60 phone calls and emails, we would be nowhere. I mean, I had one conference call about 2 months ago that put everybody together in one place, and since then, nobody's even contacted me. So I'm aggravated, and and I needed to move forward. So the lease extension I sent you, if you would have sent me back a thing saying, fine, this looks good, but we can't give you the increase because the state didn't give us the increase.
Okay, let's just be
Well,
clear
I would
here.
like-
You sent it to me last week, 7 days ago,
Right.
and this is the first time the board has met, and I haven't spoken to the board about it. It hasn't been months and months since I've been involved, so let's be very clear about that.
Right.
I don't want to point fingers at you. I don't want fingers pointed at me or the board.
Right.
Okay. I'm
Well, wait a
involved in
minute,
this
no,
now.
let's
and
wait a
we will-
second on that. I'm not pointing fingers at you, I'm pointing
Okay.
fingers at the situation.
The
And the
situation
situation
is-
is 9 months, first of all, 9 months ago, I was told my lease expired in 2013.
Okay.
I asked, let's clarify this, because my interpretation is the lease ends 2014. Nobody's clarified that in a year, in 9 months now.
Okay.
Now we're in 85 days towards, away from the end of the lease. Nobody's has said, you were right, it ends this year.
Okay.
So I'm not pointing the finger at you. I understand that you should pick this up.
Okay.
But somebody should have been getting back to me.
Okay. What happened, where we are now is where we are. We just got this extension. I'm telling you, this proposed extension. There's some things in here that are acceptable because that's what we're gonna get from the state. There are some things in here that have to be mildly adjusted, and we'll do that, and we're gonna do that in plenty of time. Probably by the next meeting, we'll be in a position to vote on the extension. With regard to a renewal of the lease, that's gonna be up to the state, because it's the state's money, not the village's money. And we will deal with that. Right now, we now have until January of 2015, and we'll know before that, whether the state wants to go forward with this, and if they do, we'll be in great shape.
I understand that, Will, but the history has shown me that that's not what happens. Let me just finish.
I'm listening.
When the village said my lease ended in January 2000, May 31st, 2013, nobody called me 30 days ahead of time to say, oh, by the way, your lease is ending. We need to renew. I went to get the rent check, and they tell me, your lease expired. So for me to put more of my stock in the fact that you're going to get a hold of me before the end of January and tell me the renewal lease is all set, I can't put all my stock in that.
Can I just say,
It's the only choice you have.
none of us at this table were, I only found out about this in the last few weeks. I think now that we are all aware of what's going on. I know, I speak for myself, I speak for the Walker Valley Rail Trail Association, and people want this park and ride to exist as it does.
I understand that, and I'm not.
Let me finish, because we let you finish.
Right.
So I think whatever has happened, we're all sitting here at this table because we want to be solution oriented and move forward. So let's put our trust in each other and help each other get in touch with the DOT to make sure they know that the whole community wants this park and ride to exist.
I understand that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, and what I say at the bottom of my outline is, I'm asking for the village's help to expedite and to
I read
communicate with the DOT. It hasn't happened so far. What I get is, well, it's up to the DOT. When I call the DOT, they tell me you got to deal with the village. So I'm running around in a circle for 9 months.
I've only read this today. We got your outline of what you were looking for. We got it today. I read it today in preparation for this conversation. I also am the liaison to the Transportation Implementation Committee that I know is a big fan of the park and ride as well. I was at the Welcome Rail Trail Association meeting last night. They got an email from you. They listed as a place to park. There's a lot of support here. So I think in terms of the DOT and where they're at, and there's a lot of support in our community that will be very willing to outreach to them. Those entities just need to be informed, and I think until very recently they didn't know there was an issue. So I'm sorry that you've been dealing with this the last 9 months, and if I had known, there would have been other groups involved, and I don't think any of us were aware. So I appreciate that you're sitting here tonight.
Well, I appreciate your
I would like to
understanding.
suggest, number one, DOT has said that they will extend it through January 2015.
Right.
I believe that our attorney has made a solution. I would like to suggest that this be on the agenda for the first meeting in April, so that we can vote on it.
What's that, Will?
I think that we can vote on the extension to match up with the DOT. No, but the next meeting, the second
The
meeting in
26th.
March.
All right,
Okay.
then, second meeting in March
Again.
on the agenda.
Oh, your birthday.
Again.
May I ask, would that demonstrate to you our resolve in this matter? If you have action by the second meeting in March on the part of the board?
What date would that be?
26.
20?
26.
By then, I would
Yeah, I would say,
worked out with you directly or with your attorney, the terms of the extension to
Right.
match up, and we'll get that part of it done, and then we'll deal with it.
the DOT does have funds available to increase the maintenance by $60 a month. I mean, the original funding, and then they extended it. They extended it because there is money left over. So it's not like they need to go find funds. So just so you know, that's the situation with the funding.
I will check it out.
I need to know by March 26th, or I'm going to start pursuing other.
You have the right to do that.
I understand. I don't want to do that. It wasn't my intention of starting the park and ride, you know. It's why I've been chasing people for 9 months trying to get it done, you know.
You have the right to do with your property exactly what you want. You know that.
Now you're within striking distance. Give us until the end of March and we'll have this.
In the
Just cleared
meantime,
up.
are we going to be working on the renewal lease?
That's what we're gonna be able to vote on March 26th, so yeah.
No, that's the extension.
The extension.
The extension of the
Oh,
current
sorry,
lease
not the
I'd be
renewal,
really
yeah.
impressed if you got that lease.
expires in a couple of months.
Right.
A little less than 3 months.
And yes,
This is the
we're working on
extension
that.
to match up with
With
what
what the
DOT
DOT
has
has
said
done,
so
yes.
far. We're
And
not sure
at
about
$625 a month, not 700.
Right, agreed.
Okay. I'd like to.
I'd like to add one other thing to the history of this, and like I said, I don't want to get into all the past administration's problems with this project. But what they did to me in June 1st, and when I came to get the rent check, or they mailed it to me, whatever, Nancy informed me that I was supposed to get my annual maintenance check, which they paid me on the first of the year, the annual renewal of the lease. I mean, the year of the lease. For 4 years, I would get the check just as promised in the contract and in the lease. This year, I showed up and they decided, no, we're only paying you on a monthly basis, because the state decided we can only reimburse the village on. Well, first of all, you know, I didn't agree to any of that. So my lease with the village says, you're gonna pay me in the beginning of the year. I'm told, you know, and this is part of my aggravation with this, is that things have changed along the way, and I was never included in the decision-making. Now, just because the state decides, oh, well, wait a minute, 4 years after we've done this, we're gonna start changing the way we do this, that doesn't make it right, and it's a violation of my lease with the village. So I've accepted that fact.
I think that is for the attorney to consider. We are the messenger,
No, I understand.
if you will.
Right.
You are the recipient of state funds, and I think that's the bottom line.
Right.
And so I don't think it is this board's job to intervene on behalf of you with the state of New York.
No, but it is the village's job, because they wanted to be lead agency in this whole thing, but they haven't led from the beginning. Now, you know, when I come to my 5th year of the lease, when I come to the village and I say, this isn't what my lease says, this isn't what the contract from the state said, nobody went to bat for me. They said, oh, that's how you're gonna get it from now on.
Well,
So what I'm saying is, if the town wanted to be lead agency also, they want to be joint lead agency, but the village wanted to take this on their own. I've let it go for 4 years, they're not getting any assistance from the village in any way, and I haven't asked for any. When I did ask for assistance in the 5th year now, with the maintenance issue, and just getting the renewal lease done and an extension done, I have gotten very little help.
but my
Mr. Rizzo,
reason- oh,
we can't really afford any more time if we need to go over what's happened in the past, because it's not relevant to where we're going in the future. Will has already said he's going to have us comments on this.
The
We've already
extension.
on the extension. We've already said we're going to be able to vote on that extension March 26th. We've already said that Will is going to be helping in whatever way is appropriate with the final version of the lease. Is there anything else that you need?
No, I just need to see it happen.
Then you're going to have a little faith in us a little bit longer, even if it's strained faith, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, thank you.
But thank you for coming.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
the time.
And I'm sure we'll get it worked out.
Yes,
And I'd like to
absolutely.
move the board into executive session for the purposes of discussing litigation. This involves litigation and the lawsuit that the board is
Can
currently
we-
involved in.
Well, there's people waiting for other agenda items. Can we do that first, or is it relevant to what's happening?
We're paying someone's time.
We pay. So I'm sorry.
Okay,
But we have to do it.
okay.
You need a second?
Second,
No idea what this is about, but, yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Nay?
You all can talk with the next.
Okay. Oh, I don't have to be in there.
No, you're not going.
Right. That lawsuit. And that's relevant to the housing? That's not, yeah, anyway.
Katie, is the small room enough?
I don't know, Sally.
Is Will going in as well? No.
Will can help with this. He represents the village.
Right.
Actually, I put them somewhere.
All right, well, I'm gonna have a smoke if anyone needs to harass me outside of the rental law. I'll smoke two at once, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's disgusting.
I know. I saw in a cartoon. If anyone wants to double team in the housing law, I'll be outside. I brought my gloves in the car.
To get a quick hamburger and a couple beers.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
We would like to,
What's for B&G's? B&G's for...
please note, Katie, in your minutes,
Shots are on top.
write it in.
Yes, ma'am.
I know Joe was a gift.
Here I am.
Will, you got a second? I know, can we talk about the rental law? Because I didn't want to respond there. I didn't see it. I got a response. You sure you responded to me?
Maybe the volunteers. Hey, how are you?
And then you just.
They had a What? I'm waiting for a gold championships tomorrow. These came from then they're getting faster. Now they're going to and then this coach the junior master. Now, I'm proud of this is my senior group that I started coaching, who are all 10, they're all graduating. They're like little 10 groups. And now they're all like big champions, and I'm like, they couldn't even barely swim. Good to see you.
At one time, we were going to help them figure out they know if they want to. You just go to the post office. Yeah. That was very interesting. Yeah. They know.
I mean, honestly, the law makes sense. It's going to bring a lot of pressure.
No, they can.
What was that?
We'll take number 19. Why would we take number 19? When you guys like,
That's what they did.
like, get it right, and be like, recap.
Yes.
I know you said.
None. None.
Right in the middle.
Okay.
They came once.
They're really happy. Yours is right next to St. Augustine Church.
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly which one it is.
Yeah, and it was
Because I showed it.
helpful, and it's gorgeous. It
It
is.
was like a class.
We could go to two houses, we could go to, and check my windows in the house. I would think. The only pictures was at yours, all the the house, on the bottom, we walk in, that's the kitchen, it's gorgeous. They came in, they inspected.
What's that? Well, like I said, but they're not close.
No, further. No, no.
That's fine. Right away, they go to the court, they do the summit, they send it to you, you have a summit. It's not done, it's done. If it's done, you're okay.
Another tentative permit.
What did they do? $30 an hour. All right, so you add another third to that because of the benefits and everything.
$20. Every time I have a meeting, I miss my Wednesday night.
Plus $30 an hour. 30, $900. I'm $90 on my 11 North Oakland house, $900.
I don't understand, you said that, I flipped. That's what this is. For a residential house?
So just
That's the number of bedrooms.
Yeah, mine's 280 for something they do in 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it's going up. It's going up.
That's why the budget only went up 1.6 because they're collecting the money on the other end.
Yeah, there should be a revenue line item.
But do they show like what they spend the money for? When they charge you for the inspection, they get that amount of money, it goes into a particular account, am I correct? What do they spend money on?
It should, but I'm quite sure it goes into the building department general fund.
So how do they pay the building inspector? Do they pay with that fund? There is different money.
No, it's the broad general.
What's the allocation from be interesting to know, what does the village budget allocate to the building department?
I think we should know.
You can get, I'm sure.
Yeah, but that should be in the budget.
It should be in the budget.
You can definitely.
From what they say, it should be zero.
Yeah.
What? There should be zero building budget. You don't think like they're so obsessed with this, it's unbelievable. How about get some lights out on Route 208? Right? How about put some holiday lights up in the middle of the village?
We didn't have baskets this summer in flower beds?
Yeah, we didn't have baskets.
Yes, but they were
The
nice.
baskets were gorgeous.
Yes, but we lost it.
Yeah, you know, Len and I and Kip, Len and I went and bought all the metal. We fabricated all the hanging baskets.
Oh, yeah,
Kip
Painted them.
painted them, and then we got the DPW to hang them.
They should charge you for all that.
You beautify the village.
We tried.
Central Hudson wasn't going to let us put them on our poles anymore. They're going to scream about it, give us grief about it.
And then they thanked us by putting it in the paper on the last page.
No problem.
Someone told me Cohasset had holiday lights. Not this one.
Wonder where they went.
Everybody had holiday lights.
Maybe so isn't that beautiful?
It's like Bob.
I don't know where they went.
It's Bob Humbug. I mean, really.
So do you really truly think that Wilmerite is already in, this is just a waste of time to just distract us from other stuff that's going on?
What do you think?
You can't talk, you can't talk.
Okay, not asking. Okay. What do you?
Well, what question are you answering? Is that
That
it's
it's
going to be
already-
built, or are they going to get a pilot?
No, both of them. That
Which
it's gonna
question
be
are you answering first?
a pilot. This, you don't think they're gonna get a pilot?
As far as I'm concerned.
I think the planning board is not gonna give them the pilot, but then the IDA is gonna give them the pilot. And
No, I'm off.
IDA
It's only a text message.
supersedes the planning board.
The idea will have to sue the town of New Paltz. That's the way it's going to be set up.
And they will and will win.
I don't know.
It's such a scary thing to have another monster around.
Years ago. But if nothing else, it might just, a year or two, that they get another year's worth of rentals before the market dies.
And I did rewrite all the fines, by the way. Made them staggered from like 100, there's categories, $100, $250, $500, $750. So there's actually no fine set in that law, the housing law right now. It's unhitched the two issues. So, just so you know.
What's the 750 for?
That was the stuff, that was like, no heat, no, like,
What
I
happens
can't remember
when the
how, I don't
tenant
know what
doesn't
it
pay
is.
its water bill?
What's that?
What happens when the tenant doesn't pay their
It's
water
between
bill?
you and your tenant. That's the thing, it's the property that I'm worried about, not the relation between who lives there and who rents. The leases should cover things like that, provisions like that. Is what I'm thinking anyway. And I don't think
There would be different lease arrangements, right? Like, you could have a lease arrangement where the tenant pays the electricity and the heat, or you could have an arrangement where the landlord pays for the heat.
right.
Yeah, it's just like an additional wrinkle that just makes,
And you just put in a provision that if the building owner gets cited for no electric and it's in your name, that fine gets passed through right onto you, or taken right out of your security, or what, something like that.
Yeah, but what if there's no security?
That's up to you as a landlord. That's your decision.
But it's up to the tenant to have electric or heat.
Yeah.
You
I don't know if they would be calling the building inspector. Oh, you mean like if we show up to the inspection and there's no electric?
whatever the case is, it's, if someone doesn't want to pay their electric bill, why should I be responsible?
I'm not saying you should be. I think the tenant should be I think the tenant should be responsible. But I don't think the proper place to outline that responsibility is in a local law. I think it's in a lease between the landlord and the tenant, is all I'm saying. Just having one clause in the lease that says any penalties accrued by tenant behavior through inspections must be paid by the tenant. I would imagine, I'm not a lawyer, but he is,
Jason, I have a question.
Yeah.
That's fine, but what about the tenant doesn't have the money to pay? Then you bring the tenant to court. The tenant doesn't have the money to pay, so you're still responsible to pay for it.
I don't know. Well, what would happen in that scenario? Or if someone refuses to pay? Is that just a lawsuit between tenant and landlord, right?
But then the
Presumably it's in your lease, that the tenant has to maintain the electric, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't maintain the place and they don't pay their electric, you evict them, right?
No,
Not at first,
not in
anyway.
this town,
You can't.
not in this town.
Of course you can, it's contractual.
Well, you have to bring it to court.
You always have to bring someone to
Okay,
court
then
to
they
evict
could live
them,
in their
sure.
apartment without paying rent
I'm sorry?
until the judge decided that it's time to evict them.
Yes.
And if it's a family with children, then you have a hard time letting it leave the place.
The people that couldn't
So
pay
you
their electric
lose
bill
now,
to begin with.
so you lose now the rent, and you still lose because you have to pay the fine.
But you're running that risk anyway with tenant, if the tenant's references don't check out, you don't let them move in to begin with.
But that's the ideal, but that's the ideal goal, is to have perfect tenants. You don't have that.
There's a difference between a perfect tenant and, there are tenants who sometimes bend the rules, then there are those who refuse to pay their rent.
But let's assume we
Well,
have
I
a
would
good
say
tenant.
refuse to, cannot afford to.
Exactly.
Probably, people don't just refuse to.
Then they, obviously, they're not paying their rent and you're gonna evict them.
But again, you have to go through the process, but at the
That's
same
the law,
time,
sure.
you get fined because now there is no electricity in the house. This is what I'm getting at.
I understand what you're saying.
So
And
you still penalize.
do you really honestly think that that's fair? That if I have a tenant that's responsible for paying the electric, they fail to pay the electric, somehow I deserve a $750 fine daily?
No, not only that, no, the electric is one of the things you get indebted for.
I think you could put 50 kindergartners in here and ask them the question, if you eat this piece of bubble gum and you swallow it, should it be my fault that? Yeah, I mean, I don't have an analogy, but it's crazy. It's absolutely,
They want to skin the landlords any which way they can.
But it's,
You know
what it is, it's the person that doesn't want to pay their rent that is going to be the one that calls up the building inspector and says, hey, I didn't pay my electric bill, I have no electric in here. That's that's the person we're worried about. We're not worried about the family that can't pay their electric bill because they don't have the money. They're not the ones that are gonna call. It's someone that has some kind of,
These are absolutely small things that if and when a public hearing is scheduled, these things all have to be brought out and put on the record. I agree.
So maybe what we should do as a group is we should require that anyone that rents our place has to put a year's worth of utilities in a fund.
Those people who can't afford to rent.
No,
That's up to you guys, I mean, that's.
Well, that is, but is that fair to the tenants? Is that fair to the 99?
People don't have these resources, right? Otherwise, they would be homeowners. Their rent is mostly, some by choice, but not all by choice, right? Or because they have to rent. Some people have lost their homes, right? Some people have had to sell their homes and scale down.
Right. Or just can't afford a down payment.
Well, or for whatever reason, they're renting, right? Many of those people would prefer to own a property. It's impossible in this town. I have kids that have left this town because they can't afford the taxes. My daughter is in High Falls. I have a son that lived here and moved to Colorado because he couldn't afford the taxes. So,
And it's just in the last 10 years, too.
so I'm telling you that these people that are renting, I have plenty, people think that I don't have all student rentals. People think that what's between the landlord and the tenant is something. I am paying someone's oil bill right now. I'm subsidizing someone's rent right now. And it's not just me. I bet every landlord here is doing something good for one or two of their tenants.
But you're not the only landlords either. I mean, you guys are, by definition, the most responsible landlords in the community because you live here. You're part of this community.
But these laws are not going to help. They're not going to help. They're not going to help the tenants. If that's who you think you're helping, that's for sure. That is not what's happening. These are punitive.
Why? And this is. It's not punitive if you're all supposed to be doing this anyway. Why you're so concerned about getting fines, but you only get fines if you don't abide by the property maintenance code. So if you're, it's a dumb argument, really, but it's that whole. I hate
that you say it's a state list.
Yeah. The state property maintenance code.
That's not the entire state list, right?
I'm sorry?
That's not the entire state list of what used to be inspected. Those are hand-picked things that went on.
No, it's the property maintenance code. It doesn't involve structural elements, but it's everything else in the property maintenance code.
Structural elements, like it's not all.
Like if there's a missing wall, or like.
Right? We looked it up. They weren't all state. Some of them were other things that were not state.
It was state, and there's a handful of things that are already in the village code.
village code.
But already in the code. I didn't add any new things.
Things like the paint chips.
It's state law. It's in the state property maintenance code.
Jason, we live in the Northeast, you know it's virtually impossible to keep paint on a building for an extended period of time.
No, for 15
Even
years.
with the high quality of primers and paints and prep work that's done, it's virtually impossible to get.
I know. I've been a house painter for 25 years. It lasts 15 years in this, on average, in this climate.
You paint a house that lasts for 15 years?
Yeah.
You can paint my house at 24 Mill Rock if you can guarantee, we're gonna paint it this summer. You wanna guarantee me 15 years, you got the job.
See, I'm trying. When did I do? I won't use the name, but there's one on Henry Du Bois that I drive by because the colors were just weird. I'm trying to think. That one was 12 years ago. You know.
Don't look
I'm
at it from a distance, though.
No, obviously. It's mostly cleaned up, and then once we have a final. I have a final draft to present for your discussion on, like, because you requested, Sally, like the gradations of fees. So I want to take another look at that, and then at our next meeting, have a conversation about that and the law.
Can we throw in our questions, though,
Yeah,
on
please.
this draft?
It should be the same, because last time we had only one outstanding issue. I asked Will, I made sure just now that Will got Joe's write-ups from our last meeting, and he said, yes, those are incorporated here.
Okay, I have.
Well, let's wait till Ariana gets back, because I want to decide, okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, we're going to just dispose of the house. Most people are here for that.
You have divided between interior and exterior, and my concern is several concerns. At the top it says.
What section?
Annual rental inspection checklist.
Where?
Have a checklist.
If this is a checklist for everybody in the village,
Every rental.
and, no, every property in the village, not the rental. Because all of these things are supposed to be enforceable, you said, of all buildings. Okay? I don't want it attached in that sense as an annual rental inspection.
What if we just say property maintenance checklist?
That's fine,
Yeah.
if you wanna call it that.
That way we could use it for both, like
And
when
then-
someone has junk in their yard or something obvious
It
that we
has
see
to
in the
be
road.
used for both because I think equitable application was very, very important. And I do not think discrimination is a good idea in the application of law. And I also am concerned about, and maybe no one else is, with the fines.
I'm concerned with the fines.
Well, the fines, that's why I wanted, we pulled them out.
If we take all the fines out of this,
So it's two documents we're looking at. One is the fines, which we don't have yet, we haven't discussed yet, because it got taken out, like Tom said, by, if you look at,
Oh, so I'm to strike your proposed fines?
no,
Because
what
there
I'm
were
saying
fines
is,
listed with this.
right, so
I
we
thought-
took out the fines in the law, and just says that the fines are adopted by resolution of the board. It's the same thing that later in the agenda, we have a local law that me and Will wrote to remove all fines and fees from the code, so that we look at them every year and adopt them at the reorg. So this law now shouldn't have any actual dollar number fine, it just says the fine is set by resolution of the board.
But the checklist
Has fines.
Right, that's why I wrote that second one as a separate document. So this would be the local law, that would be adopted by resolution, not part of the law. So that we can review that annually. If next year we think this fine is too high or too low, we can adjust it every year.
Well, okay, but there's also, so I've got other issues with the fine besides just how high they are.
Let's strike fines. But I thought.
Well, one of the things is that in conversations with the building department, they have talked about some kind of formula of like X amount per square footage, and this doesn't include that. And there, we were asked tonight, how do we come up with these as opposed to just arbitrary numbers that we're pulling out of, our own personal logic, I guess is what we're pulling them out of. We should have some sort of formula of, okay, well, if this property is this large, it's going to take me X amount of time per square foot per bathroom, whatever it might be, and the building department has specifically asked for this.
What? You know what? I have actually an answer to that.
It's easier
And I just had an idea. To avoid confusion, because I thought this would be less confusing, because there's this law, and then there's item, whatever it is,
Where you-
21,
back.
remove all of them, and that also doesn't have an actual fee and fine schedule, but I have one
Right, I
mostly
saw
written.
that.
I have
Right.
one mostly written. I thought it'd be easier to separate the two and say, okay, does the philosophy of the law work? And then after we agree or not, if we agree, then decide the dollar figure. But I think it'd be easier
I'm gonna
if I
have
had the
trouble
dollar
agreeing
figure.
on the philosophy of the law if I don't have a dollar.
So why
figure.
don't we do this? Why don't we table the housing law and table the fine and fee law, and at our next meeting I'll have a second draft of this and the first draft of the other fee schedule, so we can have something to work off
Before
of.
we table it, I have a question, because if you're gonna refine it,
Yeah, please.
I am concerned about 129.8C. Did we agree on the 15 days of said ownership transfer? Because it's my understanding.
Yeah, that I thought my recollection is
I
within
think it
15
needs
days.
to say something like, until the building department is notified, because you and I do we mean when the deed is recorded?
Hold on.
Because you and I can buy a property from each other, we can have a meeting, we can have a closing, and it's a done deal. Is that what you mean, or do you mean when it's recorded? When the deed change is recorded?
Notwithstanding the foregoing, you can't change ownership.
So I suppose, what's the definition of said transfer?
Well, I can ask Will. He could probably. That's probably
Ownership
easy one.
transfer.
All right, well,
Well,
that needs to be,
Also,
Okay.
here, I'm pulling up my old notes on the agenda that we had last discussed this. Because the 15 days,
You can draw on
yeah, that's why this is cool.
okay.
The 15 days that I have written down here was, oh God, I mean, it was under 129.8. The 15 days had to do with the deadline of the annual inspection checklist. And I don't know if we specified. Oh, and the reinspection was 15 days. That we said there's 15 days to remedy before we reinspect.
We're at 129.
8C.
D,
Well, 8C is where we have been at.
Right. Well, the thing is that the letters and numbers on the former version of this are just totally different, so it's difficult to. Oh wait, I have up here, it says, property owner must notify the building inspector of the transfer of the property within 15 days of the date of change in title, is what we had discussed.
That's what we want in here. So maybe Will didn't get all of Joe's changes. Because remember, Joe was taking notes on the last version of this.
Yeah, this is from January 22nd, that meeting. And that's, where are you looking at? It's 129.7C. Oh, okay, this is 8C.
what article are you?
She's looking at older versions, or she's trying to match up the numbers.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I'm looking at my old notes to compare to what we had
There
here.
weren't numbers, and all of the lettering which was incorrect were changed to numbers on under 129.8.
There was one of them like that, yes, but this is not that one.
See?
Because 129.8C in a former version is not the same, and I think it seems like something was moved from 129.7. Oh yeah, here, no, it's here. 129.7, registration and inspection required. Letter C, whenever ownership of a rental property is transferred, the new owner must notify the building
Yeah.
inspector within 15 days.
Right,
So,
that's not the question, Ariana.
I know, I know, I'm going through it based on my notes. I don't think we had notes on that 15 days.
What
That might be
we
just
need
Will's
is
addition.
that we need what that means. Does that mean when it's recorded, or when you and I sign the contract and exchange the money?
I guess that's why we need a lawyer to say, what does it mean to say?
Well, why don't we just do, I think,
Ownership transfer.
well, you know what? Ariana pointed out the right answer to that, which is just make the law agree. And in 129-7, it says, change of ownership within 15 days of the change of the date and title. Why don't we just put change of the date and title down
Okay, fine.
there?
That would satisfy
That way,
me.
the law agrees with itself.
I mean, yeah, that's,
Yes?
and that's what
Is that
we
what you were
already
saying?
have,
Yeah.
so.
I know that. Change of title has two different meanings. Change of title means if Ellen and I buy a property, I buy from Ellen, is the change of title at the time the sale is made? Or do we mean change of title at the time that it is recorded at Ulster County?
Well, the date of change in title. So that would be the date on the title, right?
I think we ought to ask
I think
Will.
this is a question for the
All
attorney.
right, so we'll ask Will. I'll
Under-
mark it in both places.
Okay. Under
I mean, he didn't notice it, but it doesn't mean it's,
Right. Under 129.8E, we, I believe, earlier said that a property registration form shall serve as a rental property permit. Nothing was said about a certificate of occupancy. So, do you need?
well, what's in black is what was, the only thing, changes are in blue. And those are Will's changes.
Those are whose changes?
Will.
Yeah.
I did not know that Will had reviewed this.
That's what we're reviewing now. This is Will's comments on the law.
Okay.
So everything that Will wrote or commented on is in blue. Everything else in
He
black.
has commented on or added?
These are Will's changes. Anything that's in blue are Will's changes.
I object to Will's change F.
Tenant list,
Yep,
that is in the current law right now, and he was recommending we keep it.
it wasn't in your proposed law.
No, but he said he thinks it was a mistake to remove this when this new law was written, because this is required as of now, and he thinks it's worth keeping. But obviously, we're the ones writing the law, so.
All right.
But I'll make that note, and
Yeah.
Sally objects.
Well, I would like to know his reason if he's going to, were not told that he had reviewed this and added to it. Okay?
Well, I apologize. I thought that was understood, that's why there was
No,
a
it's not
wait.
understood. And I think if somebody is, going to be asked to review and is making notes, I'd like to know why, his reasoning.
Well, I should have asked him to stay for this then. I sent him home thinking this would be pro forma. Yeah.
I would like, and this is just a suggestion, it's not any criticism of what we've done, but I think that we ought to, even when we ever get this all done, could an annual notice be put in the June water bill of all of this, so that any property owner who's thinking about renting knows what's required?
I like that.
These water bills are gonna get really thick.
And I'd like it also posted on the village website, but that needs to be incorporated into the law. Now, Will did not comment on, but we have yet to agree on 129.12.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. There was one thing that I could.
I want to strike A.
I can't. Is that current code?
Each day that a violation shall continue shall constitute a separate violation. I just think that's,
Maybe that should depend on the violation.
well, that was where I was going to go, because I understood that we had agreed, and maybe I'm wrong, that the checklist would first and foremost have the 6 areas five areas that you cannot rent if
Wait,
they're
wait,
not
do you
met.
remember where that is? I'm so
No,
confused.
I'm going back to checklist, and it's not here.
I know. And I'm saying, that you're right, that's an oversight, that's why I
Okay.
wanted to make another draft. But where in the law is that? I can't, does anyone remember off the top of their head?
It's early on.
All right, I'll find it. Don't worry about it now.
I know where it is. Okay.
I mean, if people want to just send me notes and I can incorporate them into the next draft.
Well, no, because we may not agree. I just happen to believe,
Well,
and I don't know whether I have.
Does anyone disagree with Sally's comments so far?
129.8D.
29.8D.
We're at 129.12A.
I know that we had this
D2C.
discussion,
And I
and that we had the discussion about making a
Thank you.
separate provision for the 5 sine qua non, without which you can't have occupancy,
Right.
versus those other violations.
I'll add that as a whole other category on this.
So we did have that discussion. I don't know that we concluded anything, but we certainly had the discussion.
Well, I don't disagree, but I don't think we agreed on A.
Yeah, I don't know that we agreed on a,
Ariana, do you remember?
If we agreed on which part is it?
Each day that a violation shall
12A.
continue shall constitute a separate violation.
12A.
I think at that juncture,
That might be existing code, but not to say that it's worth keeping, but.
You know what? I do not believe that we agreed on it. I'm pretty sure it actually is in the existing code, but I think we need to rework that one.
well, I don't care whether it's in the existing code or not.
Right.
If it is, I'm opposed, and I'm opposed to it here.
Yeah, just because it's in the existing code doesn't mean I agree with it now. And if we're reworking this whole law, we may as well rework the law.
So I'm gonna make a note
So
to add that to the fee schedule as well, and I'll make a stab at
All right.
which ones might be, like, no heat might be a everyday thing, or no running water, or, you know, I
there
don't
were
know, something.
5,
No, you can't rent that.
Oh, right.
5 sine qua nons. Without those, you can't have an apartment. You can't rent it.
Right.
Right.
Well, there may be nothing, there may be nothing
Right.
that
That's what I'm
requires
saying.
every day.
Every day, all day.
Yeah, well, all right, we'll take a look at that. All right, Tom and Ariana, me and Sally's been dominating the conversation, what?
I've agreed with
Okay, so
what
if I
Sally
take
said.
these notes that we have now and get those integrated in and a second draft of the fee schedule that's more polished and put it on our next agenda?
And
that-
ask Will for the reasoning behind his additions or
Right,
deletions.
Will's reasoning. All right, so then I guess no action on this. That's all you have to put in the minutes, Katie,
So
just
we're
no
gonna
action.
put it on the next agenda?
Yeah,
All right.
that'll be plenty of time. Hold on, Will's reasoning. Would you like to do the same with this local law eliminating the fees and fines? Wait until we have a fee and fine schedule and discuss it
For
all in the
everything.
package? Yeah, for everything.
I think
But
the
I
local law on fees and fines makes sense for us to have a fee schedule to discuss.
Okay. What do you think?
If you're going to
Tom,
do
Sally?
an annual reorg meeting, I think you need law in place.
Yeah.
So why don't we put the law in place and call for a hearing? That we're gonna do this.
Okay, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that tonight. I think
Will
we should.
review that one, Jason?
Will wrote that one. Will wrote that one.
Okay.
That one was too, I want to be too careful to write it myself.
I would like to move that we call for a hearing.
I'll second that for discussion, but Tom, what do you think? Because would you feel more comfortable having a draft of what these fees might actually look like, or is the law standalone enough that we could?
I believe, I'll grant you that this is a fairly impromptu judgment on my part, that we do not need to have the fees in front of us because we're determining that we will determine those fees.
That's my point.
Right,
Is that
right.
persuasive to you?
If we're
Yes.
going to determine those fees each year, they're going to change, at least possibly.
So you guys-
But we don't need to have.
You guys have persuaded Ariana, so
So I guess, then my question is that this will, wherever there is a fee or fine or a dollar amount set, as it says here in A, that will be, what exactly will it say there?
for example, penalties.
set by annually by resolution of the Board of
Right.
Trustees.
Yeah, basically
And
everywhere
so-
in the code.
So we will go through every
I've already
piece
done
of
it.
the code. You've already done it.
308 fees, fines, and
Okay,
all that.
but so when it's updated on the village website, somebody else is going through the code and doing this, and we're gonna have to make sure that it's all been done.
General code. We
Right.
passed the law, general code.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I know, we, West
Yeah.
Law and all that, yeah.
Are there some laws that we have in the code where you must state the fine?
I asked Will that, and he said there might be, and I'll double check with him.
That,
I would like an
Like
answer.
our water rates and sewer rates, we may need to do
well,
by.
that's different, though,
That's not a
because that's
fine.
that's not tax-based or...
But,
Yeah.
but it's also, but it's
And is that in the
fees-
code?
It is in the code. Fees, fines, and rates is what I have so far. So like an application fee, or, and the building department has recommendations on, I'm using their recommendations on what the fee should be, and
Okay.
they've asked me to add in new ones, like a pool inspection
Alright.
fee and various other things, so.
And my only suggestion would be that in section 2, you change on at least an annual basis. I think it should be at the annual reorganization meeting, and even if you're not recommending changes, we still adopt the fees and
I
code.
think you have to do that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, and that's originally the intent. Will thought it would be better to have it looser in case we wanted to in the middle of the year, but I like the reorg meeting because it makes it very clear when this gets
And
done.
if it doesn't get done, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, we pass a local law to allow us to do something different.
That's true.
Well, should we
It makes you-
incorporate
it makes you do
here?
double, triple work.
Anyway,
Should we incorporate here, and correct me if this is already on here, and I didn't see it, that if we do not set it, it just continues from the
then why
previous
don't we
year?
just say that the fee schedule as is continues?
Well, why would we do that? If we have a law that says you have to do it every year, then the next year you can say, no changes.
No changes.
Everybody agrees, yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that, but when we, like for example, when we took office and it was 4 people who were, you had done this job before, but we were all new to this, we had to compile everything and figure out what this reorg meant. And so there were things that were skipped over. Even this past year, not every single
Yep.
board was given a liaison. So I think in order to cover our backs, in case there's a situation where there's a totally new board for whatever reason that is the case, or a board that's, has a dereliction of their duties, it will continue and we're not putting anybody in a bad position.
I'll agree,
Yeah, I think
I'll
that,
agree to
Ariana,
that.
I think.
I'll agree to that.
Okay.
In case there's a slip.
Yeah.
If it's not changed or adopted, the old rates continue.
Okay.
And where would that go? Just another
Very end,
sentence.
put it with an asterisk.
No, it goes in section 2.
And what would this exact sentence be?
No, we'll
section
send you
two or
we'll send you a
three?
recommend, somebody will send you a recommendation.
I thought we wanted to set the public hearing tonight.
Yeah, I want to set it tonight. Should the board fail to adopt at its reorganizational meeting the fees and fines schedule, or whatever you want to call it, Jason, that schedule adopted, the last schedule adopted applies. We'll know how to.
The prior years
Yeah.
Will remain in force.
schedule will remain in
Will
force.
remain force. I'm going to move to set the public hearing for the first.
Wait, hold on, wait, hold on.
I thought we were done.
Ariana has one.
Well, I feel like this could be, the language of this could be more appropriate or proper
Send
or
it to
cleaned
Will?
up
Oh,
if
so
we
you
have
want
it.
to wait to set the hearing until we see it?
I'm not really gonna push for that, but I think, there's not a rush between doing it tonight and doing it in the last meeting of this
March.
month.
What do you think, Tom?
I think.
If Will can just look at
I
it.
think it would be good to have Will look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do
Just work backwards, Ariana. Reorg meeting.
Yeah.
At the time we have the hearing, at the time we adopt the law, then 30 days to go into effect. Have we passed the reorg meeting?
Well, since it won't be law yet,
don't know.
it'll be a different situation this year. But again, a question for Will. We can
Yep.
see that.
All right.
All right, Gina, I apologize. Let's get you out of here.
Oracle will be June.
It's been fun for Gina.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gina.
So it's conceivable.
You can probably explain the situation more quickly than I could.
Okay, and so maybe, I think Ariana, you've been in some conversations. So I was asked, because I understand that you were gonna come up with a tentative budget. Rescue Squad had asked for an increase from the town this year. We were told that part of it was gonna come from the town and part of it was gonna come from the village.
And you were told that
Yes.
by the town?
Okay,
No, it was at a joint meeting that this was discussed.
No, okay, wasn't that, yeah, wasn't that bad, really, wasn't that bad. But thanks for the concern.
He's just here to take care of you.
What happened? No, okay, thank
you
you.
haven't had enough coffee, you don't want to.
There was a presentation given to, can I thank you, given to both boards by, I believe it was you and Lauren.
Yes.
And we were presented with facts and figures as to why we needed to each contribute extra funding, and we decided that we would each contribute an additional $25,000, half 25 from the village, 25 from the town. And the town put it in their budget contingent on the village putting in their portion.
But we were supposed to have a subcommittee meeting.
Yes.
Which we have not had to discuss this very topic.
Agreed. Yes.
And so, I would like to have that meeting.
Well, we've been trying very hard to have that meeting.
You and I were available.
And Ted has given many days that he has been available to sit down with us. Lauren had invited me to come sit down as well. And because I was at the Rescue Squad last month for Town Gown, I was able to talk with Ted about this, and my questions were answered. And so I feel confident that we should add this amount of money to the budget. And I know that there was some talk, and I think you sent a question about the money from Woodland Pond that is going to the Rescue
Which is going
Squad.
to buy an ambulance.
Exactly.
Was the answer?
It's
going to buy an
already
ambulance, it's
earmarked to
earmarked.
buy a new ambulance.
Yeah.
It's part of the agreement with what the money is supposed to be used for. It cannot be used for something else.
It is in Woodland Pond there, the contract.
It's within their
says-
pilot.
It says 150,000, or 150,000 for an ambulance. That's what it says. It's not to be used for anything else, and that's what we're doing with it.
Yeah.
But you are getting additional pilot money from both the village and the town next year, independent of Woodland Pond.
We're getting
From what?
additional pilot money.
That's why we need to have the meeting. And I really do not, and I think I wrote to the mayor this, I really do not believe that it is appropriate. The town is basically the contracting body with the rescue squad. And for the town to say to two village board members, oh, meet with them separately, I think is undermining the whole process, because presumably the town has more knowledge and direct operational relationship with the rescue squad than we do. And it is in the A fund.
Yep. That's the
and
big issue.
should remain in the A fund, and the village taxpayers pay town taxes through the A fund. So I don't think, I'm not comfortable adding this as an add-on to the village budget for a lot of reasons. One being, I really do think that given the response sheets I've seen, that many of the calls are to the college, and Ariana said they're required, this isn't a fault of yours, that RAs must call. I think it would behoove us for both the town and the village representatives to seek a donation from the college balance some of this share. Because I think the taxpayers should not be either village, town, or a combination of both should be burdened with providing services that are not being paid for by a constituency.
I couldn't agree with you more, Si. I will never vote in favor of this because it's the same thing when they asked us to give more money for Moriello Park. It's the same thing when they asked us to give more money for. They keep doing this a lot. If we're the village to give $25,000 to the rescue squad, what it means is the village residents are paying twice, and the town residents are paying once. We're paying for our $25,000, and because it's in the A fund, we pay our taxes go into the A fund. So we're paying the A fund tax. We're paying part of the town's $25,000 and all of the villagers. So it's all staying in the A fund where it belongs. It's a relation between the town and the rescue squad. The same thing as it's between the town and the police department, and it's the same thing as between the village and the fire department.
Yeah.
Well, but see though, if we were gonna take this stronger position, we should have done this to begin with and not even
I think
entertain
I did.
this.
And I did as well.
But my point
I
in
don't
this
think you
area,
were there.
I'm open to having a discussion with the town and the rescue squad on this topic,
Which hasn't happened.
which has not happened, and so I do not have any better understanding than what I understand.
Okay. I mean, I just looked up the email that we got regarding the pilot payment, and the pilot payment is $160,000 from Woodland Pond. There isn't another one that I see in my email, because I remember Nancy sent us an email with the pilot
I'll have
payment.
Nancy send you the sheets.
So what are we doing about this tonight? To torture Gina?
I would like to have, I don't like it, the fact that they're out there.
Well, that's the thing is that now we're in a bad position because we did not say to the town, no, we're never going to do this. And they put in $25,000 contingent on our $25,000, and the bottom line is the rescue squad needs $50,000.
And the town can come up with their other fund balance.
I mean, just so, I mean, we've gone ahead, this is clearly for staffing, and we've
Right.
spoken to you guys about this. We run simultaneous calls. All we want to do is cover our district. In our eyes, and I'm going to get to a real human level, whether I pick them up at the college or in town or on the thruway, it is the same. We need to serve the people of this community. I don't want to see what has happened in other communities where literally the town supervisor dropped dead and they did not have an ambulance to pick them up. And
No
I mean,
one's saying we want that
I
scenario.
know, I
of course.
just want to say this because I think sometimes you don't hear the human level.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is, this is what is happening. And I so what we've done is we've gone ahead, we've staffed it like we wanted to staff it. 2 crews running 24/7, almost all the time. We've put it in our budget, we're gonna pay for it however we need to pay for it. This is not gonna give us, this is not profit, this goes right to paying the staff. That's all we wanna do is pay the staff. So what we've been told by the town is exactly what Ariana said.
Right.
So I was asked to come here to just see what was going on with the budget. So however, if we need to have these meetings, let's have these meetings. I am happy to sit in these meetings. I work, this is my job. I do it 40 hours a week. I can come, I can sit, I can speak to these points. Ted is the president of the board, but I don't know what his schedule is. Everybody has these crazy schedules.
So we just need to find a way to fund the rescue squad in a way that doesn't double tax village residents.
I
mean, we meaning the 5 of us here.
Right.
It's not your job, it's our job. And
I hear you on
yeah.
that, but I would be willing to do it this year to make them whole, because I think that
I wouldn't because I know the town can't. The town can make them whole.
I just hate the pitting the village and the town against each other, and I'd rather not put the rescue squad in the middle
That's not
and
what I'm
revisit this in
concerned
a
about.
year.
I'm concerned about leaving the rescue squad high and dry.
That's what I'm saying.
Because the town and village can't get its act together.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
That's what
Sally.
Amanda just said.
But what I'm saying is that we are in the budgeting process. there is no reason that we can't have this subcommittee meeting, which you and I are both available for before.
I don't disagree, but I'm willing to have a meeting, you and I and whoever
Who's
is.
on the town?
I think it was Jeff and
Barry.
and Kevin, yeah.
And they couldn't make it to the meetings, is that?
We all had different days that worked.
But
you know,
we
with the
were
bottom line.
available and they weren't.
Well, they were available other days. You and I happened to be available a day that was similar. It wasn't that they were unavailable. Yeah, and then I literally was unavailable. But so I think, you know, if it's just you and I and Gina or Ted or, you know, whoever's available from the rescue squad to do it, I'm open to doing that.
I'm not. Because I think this is a town responsibility, and what I'm trying to understand or find a common ground is there. Not you, me, and Gina. I need the town there as a part of this process.
Okay, so then let's make it happen.
I'll substitute for anybody who can't make it, because when I was hit by a car, the rescue squad came to my rescue.
That's good to know.
And
Glad we were available.
Whether I paid for it or I didn't pay for it, they came to my rescue.
Okay.
All right, so you guys are gonna clear this up, Sally and Ariana, and
I'm not chair of the committee, Jeff is, and he, of the subcommittee, and he was supposed to.
but you guys are gonna light a fire under Jeff's.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't care who the chair is. We'll make the meeting happen.
Right, I think, and
We're also going to sit at the town meetings and stare at them too.
Good.
This is our new floor.
You'll know now to bring a book.
Well, you know, I have my schoolwork with me.
There you go. Perfect.
Anyway, I appreciate.
Thanks, Gina. Sorry we kept you waiting so long.
Yeah.
It's tough to juggle.
I really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying. All right. Let me see where we're at here. Oh, just one quick bit of business. I'd like to table number 18 because Rebecca's not here and it was her.
I can tell you, it's already going to GIC.
Oh, so we're going to wait on their recommendations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't intended to be on this agenda.
Perfect.
No,
Okay.
there was a recommendation last time
And
to
we
do
got
that,
all
and
of
yeah.
that set.
Okay.
Good night, Gina.
And one other, I think this is actually going to be a very quick one. I'm sure you, based on the emails that got put back and forth, you'll know why 17 is on the agenda. I just have one question first. Do we want to even consider discussing this?
I will move that.
I was not just asking for a straw poll.
No, I want to make a motion.
Okay.
I want to move that the village of New Paltz not enter into any discussions with Wilmer Wright at this time until such time as Wilmer Wright and the town of New Paltz have concluded whatever they're going to conclude, and the issue is ended there.
Is there a second?
I don't know that I know what that means. I don't know what that means.
It means that
The
we're
town
going
planning
to
board,
continue
the
to
town-
function as one community. This board is on record regarding Wilmer Wright, and I do not think that Wilmer Wright should be even anticipating a discussion separate and apart with the village board until such time as the town planning board has finished its work and the IDA and Wilmer Wright and the town have negotiated whatever they're going to conclude. And when all of that is concluded, if such time as it appropriate, Wilmer Wright may approach the village board.
About annexation or about?
I don't care.
No, well, the issue on this agenda, wait a minute.
I have
The
a
issue
totally
on this
different
agenda
suggestion.
is only an annexation proposal from Wilmer. That's all that's on this agenda in
You
front of
read
me.
their proposal. If you read their proposal, it is more than that.
So, all right, this is what I think we should do. I think that we should not have a discussion about this tonight, and I think that we should add it to our joint meeting agenda, which we are having a joint meeting with the town board on the last Thursday this month.
The mayor
The 27th.
received a request from Wilmer Wright summarizing what they would like to be involved in.
Yeah, I know.
I believe
I read the
village
proposal.
should reject that.
I don't want us to make any motion on this. I want us to follow through with what we said we were going to do when we voted last time and said that we would not have any discussions regarding Wilmerite without the town board. And so I think that what we should do is put this on our joint agenda, and if we want to make a motion and vote on it then, we could do it then. I don't want to do that, because I think what we should do is discuss with the town board as a unified community what is best for the greater good of the whole of New Paltz. And maybe through a discussion between the village and the town board, someone says, oh, I think that this is a good idea for X, Y, and Z. And I don't think we should have that discussion even if one of us has a reason why it's a good idea, or why we don't want it at all without the town board, because we committed at the last meeting here with them that we would not discuss it without them.
Right, but
I agree
we
with her.
also had a great hue and cry about a meeting that occurred,
It's definitely ice.
okay? About a meeting that occurred within this village, okay? And that a proposal had been presented to the mayor to bring to us.
Yeah.
And I say we should reject it out of hand and do what you're saying. I think that would affirm our position that we want to work as one community.
We can't do both. They're
Yeah,
mutually
I don't.
exclusive.
Yeah, I think exactly. I agree. I agree with what Jason just
They're
said. If
mutually
we do both,
exclusive.
yeah, those two things are mutually exclusive. If we reject it out of hand, we cannot do what we committed to doing with the town board. I think we can only. Well, then make your motion. See if it's seconded.
No one has seconded it yet.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I
Has
made it.
anyone seconded Sally's motion?
All right, then I didn't.
Motion fails. So I guess I'll move to table this to the joint meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Sally?
I'm opposed because I think we should reject a request to the village board out of hand.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's get back, because I'm going to forget them. Sally, why did you want to pull the parade requests from the consent agenda?
Because I want to move to approve the 3 parade requests. We have to decide whether we're going to ask for payment for our DPW, which is $275 per parade. But we can discuss that. I want to move to approve the 3 parades pending town board approval.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I don't understand. That's my ignorance.
All right.
I'm totally ignorant about it.
We had a parade committee composed of the town and the village representatives, and last June we proposed all sorts of new revisions which would have addressed some of the issues being of concern regarding parades. And one of the statements was that the village always approves parades and it's not in the town budget. Okay? So the committee began. The committee made recommendations. The 2 boards have had those recommendations since last June and have not addressed them. And at the juncture of addressing them, there was some desire to make changes. Nothing in the new proposed parade policies have been adopted by either board.
Right.
We are still operating under the old rules. The old rules are that the town has a schedule of payments for parades to cover police costs. I do not know whether the town has approved or not approved covering those police costs. The clerk has done a very good job trying to ascertain this. Your applications are all date stamped by the town, but since I don't know whether they in fact have approved it, I believe we should. We're gonna allow the parades in our streets, but we do not pay for public safety, and we do not charge. So therefore, it has to be the town.
I have one thing that I know because I was at Town Gown this morning for the April 5th Little League Parade, New Paltz Baseball and Softball Association. Joe Snyder said that the police are donating their time to police this event and have traffic safety.
That is the church event, the Palm Sunday event?
No, that is the baseball, Little League parade. So there's nothing, I mean, he said that, obviously, it's what's happening. We have nothing in writing saying that. That was not part of the request on the agenda or anything along those lines. So, Joe, I appreciate, them being willing to do this. He said that everyone said, we're not going to take this away from the kids, basically.
But my motion still remains, Ariana.
Right. I'm just kind of putting that out there, right? But we can still
Is the motion,
we can still
in
approve it
effect,
next
that
meeting.
any vote that we take on this now is contingent on,
We're approving our streets be used for the parades. We have no say over
police protection,
traffic control
traffic
safety,
control safety, okay.
and therefore our approval is pending the town board approval of the parades.
Okay. I'll second that.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
And what was these?
Now, the other is the park use.
And we can just say yes to that, or do you want to
Yeah,
do something else? Okay.
Park use, Katie, have they put their deposit in? Have they made their park use application to you?
Yes, we have the park use application for the June 1st event.
Right. For the,
We have their deposit.
We do not have their deposit yet.
okay. So we need to approve that, they did give you their certificate of insurance, however.
Yes, that's on here. Certificate of liability.
I'll move to approve it pending the receipt of the deposit required.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the energy audits. Ariana, you want to take this on, and especially in the context of the fact that we all forgot that we did one of these 7 years ago?
I didn't forget.
I asked for the first one. The first
Okay.
one.
Okay, so this is yours, I'm sorry.
Trustee.
15 is
I
yours,
asked
16
for
is
number
Ariana.
15, yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't forget. I went and dug it up before
Oh.
and I found it to be,
I apologize.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's out of date, but,
Yeah.
Because I
but I think it's good for
did
us to
not know, number one, that the village of New Paltz had an energy audit done in 2004 with recommendations made, some of which have been done and some of which have not been done. And so I asked, once I found out that we had this, I asked for a report from Blue as to what has been done and what hasn't been done vis-a-vis the recommendations made by NYSERDA to the village board. And as you can see, we did not do the thermostats.
We did not insulate.
Replace all the thermostats. We did not insulate hot water pipes, and we did not do the storm windows. And at the very bottom, you'll see that the audit didn't include the DPW garage windows at all, and he is recommending those be replaced. But it seems to me that why am I paying for a new energy audit when an
We
audit
haven't
that
done
was
it.
done and paid for hasn't been completed? And two, it seems to me that the original audit and all of the proposed audits all recommend natural gas.
Not all of them.
They all do.
No, Steve Winter Associates did not. Stephen Winter Associates did not.
And Rich Ruth has never heard of them.
They're based
I
in New York
asked Rich
City.
Ruth which of these people he could recommend and felt were competent, and he said the two are Johnson and CHA.
I mean, Stephen Winter Associates is based in New York City, from what I saw on that. So that they're not local.
But you will grant, other than the majority and the former NYSERDA audit all recommended natural gas.
Well, the former audit did not recommend natural gas.
Pardon?
The former audit did not recommend natural gas.
They said if it weren't so prohibitive,
It was
at that point, it would be the best thing to do. But now that it has all gone down in costs, and in fact, probably, you know, they are saying that we should do that. So that's all I want to point out, because all I'm saying is, the first thing I would ask is that, and I don't understand why it hasn't been budgeted for, since this is a 10-year-old audit, and there are 5 items that weren't even addressed, that I think those should be addressed.
Number 8, I think, is in this year's budget.
The windows.
The windows in the
Yeah.
DPW, at least.
Yeah, I saw it in Blue's worksheet.
And most of this stuff
That was for the DPW
Yeah.
house, but it did not include the firehouse.
No, it didn't, and I think I think that we should do all of these things.
Most of these we can do. I mean, thermostats are not expensive. You know,
Right.
insulation for hot water pipes is not expensive. The doors and windows are, and we got these windows are the ones that he's mentioning. We're done. The
Right.
replacement windows.
But my point, Jason, is that when you do an energy audit and you fail to do those things which are recommended,
Right.
as the reason to do a new energy audit is a little
Okay, so
nonsensical.
what are we
Well,
doing
I don't
with this
think that
tonight?
that's a reason to do the new energy audit. I think that an energy audit from 2004 versus 2014 would be different.
How do you think
I
they'd be
looked
different?
through all of the things that they said they would do. And I could not find anything. Lighting upgrade calculations. We did lighting upgrades and we finished them in 2011. Why would I want another one?
Well, I think that there are technologies now that are different from then, and that's what I got out of some of these energy audits.
I think I'm going to move we implement the ones we haven't done.
I would second that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
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 So I want to just know, after the fact of saying aye, there are how many of those? 5? Is that what we said?
There are 5.
5.
There number 1, number 4, number 5, number 8, and the last sentence in the paragraph at the bottom. So that makes 5.
Single pane windows.
Yeah, replace them.
Well, he wants to replace those,
Right.
and he thinks they should be.
But I mean, that is the point. I mean, that's the number 5.
Yeah, that's the number 5.
Right, but 1 and 4 are also the same.
And are we
They're
ignoring
both
the natural
30
gas wasn't cost effective, but it is now?
Well, that's the next question.
I am vehemently opposed to natural gas. I think it is the wrong decision for New Paltz. I think it's the wrong decision for everybody, and I think it's a terrible bet on a commodity that is only going to increase in price. And once they lock us into infrastructure, they are going to make money off of us. I was going to say something.
But but Ariana, you have to also be respectful of your professional's recommendation, and he gave facts and figures and projections as to the cost savings that would in fact be realized by converting from oil to natural gas.
Right, but those were given to us by the company that's selling it to us, first of all. And I in return, gave 90 pages of material that was also facts and figures and a lot of research in my own time that countered it. So I think that that was my respectful response.
I would also like to say that much of your data came from Cornell University. And Cornell University converted to natural gas to save money.
And
But the administration at Cornell University and the researchers at Cornell University are not
They don't
making
talk to
decisions
each
in hand.
But
I mean, well, think about the college campus here. There's the faculty governance and then there's the administration, and they do not always agree. In fact, they often do not.
They often do not.
Yeah, but my point is this. It's not what I think. I think we have to assess things in terms of value for the taxpayers. You emotionally, I feel very strongly one way. I emotionally, personally am opposed to my ever hooking up for very personal
It is not emotional for me at all. It is purely based in fact, and the idea that the energy cost of natural gas, as soon as they've extracted all of the easy to get to natural gas, starting in 2015, the costs are going to skyrocket, and that is the whole game plan. Is that they want to convert as many people into natural gas as possible before that happens, and that's from the U.S. the Independent Statistics and Analysis of the U.S. Energy Information Administration.
Okay, wait. Let me pause everything right there for a second.
There was an explosion today, by the way, in Harlem. Yes.
All right, wait, hold on. Let's take a step back. Because what we're actually discussing is not whether we're going to hook up to natural gas or not. It's whether or not we're going to hire an energy auditor to do a flex tech audit.
Two separate things.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Okay.
But
And
what's
one
on the
decision
agenda?
was made.
What's on the agenda
I'm willing
tonight
to work on
is
what we did not
this.
implement before we go into doing a new audit.
You willing to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
What
Is
do you
that?
want to do?
I'm willing to work on what we have not implemented from the former audit before we do some new audit.
Okay.
Is that satisfactory?
That is
And Tom, is that
satisfactory,
right with you?
but
Yes.
Okay, so we
So we can
are-
table the flex tech stuff till
Do what?
the flex.
Flex text.
Table the proposals.
All the other.
They're all going to be good for 30 to 60 days, all these proposals. So we can, once we establish how we're going to do this, we can revisit this, right?
That's okay.
Even if it's a matter of talking to Blue and getting the price quotes and making sure it's all
Yeah.
in this budget.
Because I think that's what we need
I think
to
a
do.
lot of it is. I'm not sure all of it is.
Some of it definitely is, but other
I'm
things we just need to
Blue on
see the
this
cost.
very topic.
Sorry, was that?
That is what generated the report as
Right.
to what we had not done.
I want to make sure that the dollar figure to do all this is in the budget because I'm not sure off the top of my head whether it is.
But it should have been.
Right. I want to check. That's all I'm saying. I want to check. I want to
That's
check.
fair. But my point is that Jason, I think we should not postpone I think we ought to vote either to do a new energy audit, as Ariana has asked, or not do it, because we respectfully took time out from a motion that passed that is still on the table to be implemented, and that is to go with natural gas. The only reason we haven't begun that process is that Ariana felt very strongly about
As did
doing an
Rebecca.
energy audit. Well, but I mean, Rebecca too. But the minority felt very strongly that an energy audit ought to be done, and the three majority, out of respect for that, said, okay, we'll sit on implementing until it's done. So that's where we are.
Since everybody except for the one, and I'll recognize that, who responded, and our old one, and our head of public works recommends natural gas, I'm in favor of doing it. I mean, I know we're waiting on the generator to make this decision, and if it were a matter of a clean source of energy versus natural gas, I'd be whatever the price. But if our options are natural gas, oil, nuclear, and coal, which is really what our options are, whenever you flip this, I mean, the lights now are nuclear, oil, and coal. I don't see how natural gas is worse than that.
Well, I think
And if it can save us money to put towards other things, it could do
natural
good.
gas prices went up 26% in 2013. Natural gas prices went up 26% in 2013.
Well, because.
And they will
of the
only
winter problems.
continue to go up.
But won't oil as well? And
Well, that's why.
Oil went up.
But you don't know any of that. And
It's a
I read a
detective
report today about explorations for natural gas, which go down during the winter, and use goes up and cost goes up.
But it's not about winter. It's about the full year.
Wait a minute.
2013.
That you've already had that said. You're not an economist. You don't know
But
that
Timmy.
stuff. And well, there are other proposals on the table about the probable cost of natural gas going into at least the foreseeable future. The foreseeable. I don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now.
Are you talking about converting a boiler to natural gas, or are you talking about buying new boilers? If
Conversion.
you're talking about converting, you're making a bet on commodity prices. That should not be the business of any of us.
well, we're making a bet on commodity prices by sitting still
Yeah, if we
using
do
oil.
nothing, we're making a bet on
Yeah, no
commodity
matter what.
prices.
there's just as much economic argument to say that oil is gonna decrease or it's gonna stay where it is relative to natural gas. These are commodity prices. They're gonna become
And coal is
proxies for each
cheaper
other.
right now too, Tim, but I'm not, it's coal is the most polluting thing you could do. So if we're gonna do it on the commodity market, let's convert to coal.
Many make the argument that natural gas is as polluting as oil. As using oil is.
Again, the calculus,
The process to extract it
Mhm.
is equivalent to oil.
And that's going to get more expensive. And oil, if oil and natural gas in terms of pollution and energy, whatever, are equivalent, I'll still go with natural gas because it's cheaper, even if it is right now. Because oil and natural gas are going to go up.
But it's cheaper
As
for
is the-
a short time.
Jason, on point of order, unless one of the people who voted affirmatively to go with gas moves to rescind, it's a done
It
discussion.
is. I'm just trying to make sure that everyone feels that we've had the discussion thoroughly enough.
But,
Well, mostly Ariana.
all we voted on was moving forward. We did not vote on authorizing signatures or anything like that. When we had the motion.
Give me one moment, I'll calculate the
I believe we did.
We did not.
I think we moved to get prices.
I went back to the minutes where I remember distinctly because Rebecca and I had a lengthy discussion about it.
Well, Sally, Tom, what motion would you like to make then regarding natural
I'd
gas?
like to hear what we already did.
I'm just bringing it up.
Is there anything else we can deal with?
Is there anything else? on the
Stupidly
table?
short. Anyone? I can't remember what the Moriello pool one is.
Oh, I have a note from Nancy.
All right, so don't worry about that one yet. And do we want to even discuss the
22.
Christian thing?
I have a question on 22, and I think that then we could table. My question, Jason,
To start of New York.
I would love to invite the college to come and talk with us about this. But the properties that they've added on the back of the summary are all over the place. And they say these are properties within 1 mile.
No. I have an update because I spoke with Don Christian this morning at Town Gown. I can give you information on that.
Okay.
He said the law is written to include a 1 mile radius around the campus, but since there is not a place in the 1 mile radius around the campus for commercial or business use, he said that he knows in his discussions with whoever higher up, he knows that they would be willing to grant. I can't remember exactly the word, but to have a waiver. And so they've inventoried commercial spaces within 5 miles and within 8 miles around the campus in
Then
New
it
Paltz.
should not say 1 mile.
Right.
The state law says 1 mile.
That's what it is, yeah.
Campus,
Okay.
which is the entire village of New Paltz, down to Jansen and.
He wanted to clarify very distinctly that those properties would not come off the tax rolls.
Right. The whole point is a 10-year tax.
The property itself would not come off the tax roll, but the business would benefit from income and sales tax breaks. And other
So
things.
no property tax breaks.
Right, so
That's
the
good to know.
properties, it's possible, I didn't ask for this kind of clarification. I guess it is possible based on the idea that if the business owner is also the property owner, that would happen. But he said many times in the meeting this morning, those properties would not come off the tax rolls. And he said he looked into that because he wanted to be very clear because he knows what an issue it is in New Paltz.
I think we ought to invite
think?
the college to come.
I think that's a great idea.
All right, so let's invite
Whether
and
it
table.
be John Christian or whether he would like to send his designee, Mr. Winter, isn't that his name?
Oh yeah, Rich Winters.
Richard Winter, who is, I guess, the point man for this project.
Definitely is,
I think it would be nice to have one or both come and talk with us about this so we have a complete and clear understanding.
So can we table this until we get that presentation from them?
When are our comments due? April 2nd? The comments are due April 2nd, right?
Yeah, so we need to invite
At our
them
next
for the
meeting.
26th, but we've got a budget to do.
Well, we
And a joint
also,
meeting.
if we only have a conversation with them on the 26th and then we draft up comments and we don't have time to vote on agreeing that we want those to be submitted from the board.
Well, my only,
We have a special meeting after the 26th.
I was thinking
To
maybe
deal
we
with budget-
should. That's
budget and this.
exactly what I was just thinking.
I'm not so concerned about at the moment, taxable or not taxable property. But they would obviously not adhere to local zoning law. So Cherry Hill's an R1 district. They show Cherry Hill as being a potential property to purchase. So my question is, on the properties that they are, that they have proposed, many of them are in residential districts.
That's funny. He said that they inventoried commercial space, but I guess.
Well, I think True Value and that Cherry Hill Plaza are on Cherry Hill, so it could
Well,
be
yeah,
one of those.
but so the impact,
Dunkin' Donuts is on Cherry Hill.
I would want to know about that.
All right.
So-
Two Cherry Hill, as far as I know, isn't for sale.
All right, it's almost 11:15, so let's resolve what we're doing with this. Ariana had the idea that we should probably set a special meeting between now and the 26th, maybe to discuss budget and
I'm
ask
not
Don.
available Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Well, we can have Katie, I mean, we don't need to set them right now, because that'll take
All
forever.
right, that's fine with me.
But is that
I'll-
amenable to everybody as
Yep.
informally?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Katie, set a special meeting. for
I'd rather
budget.
have two shorter meetings
Yeah,
than one
thank
longer
God.
one.
Yeah, and yes, and
I
please
just
the
wanted to
minutes.
point out that with the mayor's permission, Brendan White was asked to make comments on the
I saw that,
document
Yes, we
that was
saw
provided
that.
at the table for you tonight.
Yeah.
The minutes from the July 24th, 2013 meeting reflect Trustee Rocco moved to approve the conversion of the Village Hall heating system to natural gas. And Trustee Rhodes seconded. There were 3 ayes, 2 nays. Trustee Basco and Deputy Mayor Rotzler, the motion was carried.
I thought that, and that we had only postponed implementation out of respect for your request.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna discuss the rest of that once we get clarification on the existing energy audit.
Yeah,
And let's move on. Katie, you had a memo from Nancy on number 20?
Nancy sent me a note at the last minute, so I'm just bringing it up.
Because I can't, I read it, but I can't recall, I'm trying to recall the contract. Who's
I-
responsible for what?
So this is what Nancy says.
We do have capital improvements? Is that-
Please let the board know that she requested the bid document from Moriello, but has never received them yet. So that she does not believe that they should pay the bill that's on the agenda until the documents that have been requested are received.
So moved. Is there a second?
well, I would defer this to the joint meeting again, because by that time, the documents should have been received. We should know whether bids were done and all of that. And I would ask the clerk to research, because I know that this was discussed and agreed to at a joint board meeting when Stuart was still on the board, and he asked the $15,000 be transferred for the purposes of doing this, but I don't know that we were ever notified of the bid quote received. I know we discussed it, and we agreed that we would do it, but I don't think we were ever notified. Did we actually finally vote on our hand? That's what I don't remember.
I did a cursory check when it was handed to me, and I didn't see.
You'd have to look at joint meetings, I think. Not village board meetings.
Right.
Ariana, do you remember?
I don't.
And we believe that this occurred in 2013. We believe this occurred in 2013.
Oh, it's 2012, I think. I mean, this is coming because it's so late, but I think the repairs were done and we agreed to them. It's the funding part I'm not sure about.
Right, right.
Whether they, they were supposed to go out for bid for this. And then I thought, on capital projects, we jointly awarded the bid.
That is how it's supposed to work.
That's how it's
Yeah.
supposed to work, and I don't remember our ever jointly awarding the bid. That's the part I don't remember. I know we discussed it, and I know Stuart moved to transfer money. Yeah, Jason?
Oh.
I think because Rebecca could not be with us, and since we have now clarified our position on gas, and we've taken that we want the Energy 2004 issue implemented, might we discuss the new energy audit again when Rebecca is with us, since both Ariana and Rebecca wanted that? Would that be fair to do?
I think
I
that's,
would like that.
that's a good idea.
I'm
All
in
right,
favor.
and so I'm totally have lost track now. We're tabling the Moriello pool thing till the joint meeting and requesting that we have
Copy
the
of
town's
that.
documentation ahead of that meeting.
Yes.
Okay. And we're gonna set a special meeting to discuss the budget and to discuss, what was the other thing?
Down Christians.
Yes.
Don
start at
Christian's
New York.
thing, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. It's only 11:15.
I know,
and
I
you
know.
are fading.
I know, well, it's been a
He's
long
not
day.
alone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right, so-
agreed.
All right, so there's one other thing, and it'll be very brief, a brief executive session just to update the board.
Okay, Wilma Wright is also going to join board meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got that, Katie?
Yes, I'm very clear on
All
that.
right, so I'd
Two
like,
things for joint and two for special.
I'll move that we go into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Okay, second.
Okay, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
And you can go. We're not going to take any action. Thanks.
Do you
This,
want the clerk to stay?
no.